Hey, good morning, folks, or afternoon, rather. How's it going? I see that not many people have joined into the podcast yet, so I'll give it a few minutes and see who's going to fall in. Let's see. Hope you guys are having a good Saturday, by the way. This is like my favorite day of the week because we get to do this show and discuss our favorite topics: philosophy, metaphysics, um, spirituality, religion, theism, atheism, skepticism, epistemology, all of that good stuff. So yeah, man, I love this day of the week. And I want to welcome the new subscribers. We've been getting a lot of new subscribers over the last week, and welcome you guys. I'm glad you're joining. We're trying to grow the community, so it must be working out pretty good. I've been putting a little shorts out there, trying to make it a little more entertaining for everybody too, instead of so dry. I know that philosophy and metaphysics can be boring. So, I'm trying to do my best to be an entertaining host, if you will. So that's what we're doing now. So please like and subscribe. We're going to be having some guests coming in, later on, that we can definitely have on the show that would be interesting. And we're just setting all of that kind of stuff up. So yeah, like and subscribe to the channel. Um, got some interesting stuff coming up, and like usual, it's interactive, so you can always, I'll put the link up to join the stage when we're done with our little stuff here, reacting to videos or discussing whatever. We like to get you guys involved and have these kind of conversations. So yeah, man, like and subscribe to the channel. Help us out a little bit. Um, you know, we try to make it fun, make it interesting, all that good stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about Stephen Wolfram. So today we'll be diving into the ideas of Stephen Wolfram and his radical proposal that reality itself may be the result of simple rules that play out across an enormous space of possibilities. An enormous space of possibilities. Instead of starting with particles, fields, or even space time, Wolfram asks us to start with computation and then rethink what mind, observation, and consciousness really are within that framework. So, like, if reality is fundamentally rule based and observer dependent, it raises a fascinating question. Is the mind something produced by the universe or something that helps carve the universe we experience? Kind of a radical approach there. But yeah, we're going to be talking about it. And Sophia will be on here in just a little bit. We're going to get together and react to this video about Stephen Wolfram. Now, a little bit about him. He's a theoretical physicist, and he's written books. He's all over YouTube. Really, really smart guy. He's like a savant, very intelligent. Um, he has some very unique perspectives on reality, and he has a model that he talks about called the Ruliad, which basically talks about this rule-based sort of um, computational universe. In brains will interface like human brains, animal brains will interface with the reality, with these sort of the space of probabilities, and cause the sort of experience that we share based on the kind of interfaces we are to the universe, right? So it's really interesting stuff. Um, if you're out there, let me know. If you're out there, just let me know. Like I said, we're gonna have you guys come on the stage after we do a little reaction to get your thoughts and everything like that. And yeah, we're definitely looking forward to this one here. And we have Sophia on the stage. How's it going, Sophia? Can you hear us okay?
Uh,
A little bit of a lag, huh?
yes. Hello.
Hey, can you hear okay?
Shit. What's that?
So I tell you what I'll do is just waiting for some folks to file in, and then we can start going over the video. This is an interview where he was on uh this particular show, which is, let me see, it's called the Dr. Mayim
Yeah,
Balik.
I hear you, but can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep, can hear you. And this video is called "Your Reality Is Not Real: Aliens, Telepathy, and Time Travel." Quantum physicist Dr. Stephen Wolfram. So I just thought we'd go over a little bit of it. I thought it was a kind of an interesting interview. I didn't see the whole thing, just a little bit, so I thought we'd go over it in real time together to check it out. So is everything good on your end, Sophia? Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a lag. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. Um, let's go ahead and play the.
I'm struck in particular by this notion of kind of difference in scale, because for most people, especially those who are not trained in fields of physics or quantum mechanics or even mathematics to the level that we're talking about, there's this notion of like the universe is so big, right? Like that seems like something that everybody can get on board with. The universe is so big, right? And that means that we are very, very small. But as you have just described it, this shift in scale perspective is also that there are certain things that if you look close enough, right, they're all the same. So what we are made of is the same thing that the table is made of, the same thing that an ant is made of, the same thing that a single-celled organism is made of, the same thing that algae is made of, right? It's all the same. Can you talk a little bit about even some of the more esoteric implications of that in terms of understanding our place? Are we significant? Are we insignificant? How do we sort of juggle both of these?
So I guess she's asking about where are places in this universe that we seem to be a part of. We're kind of like the universe experiencing itself, or a small part of the universe that experiences itself. We're all made of the same stuff. So she's asking the question, and this will kind of give a little bit I thought I'd start here because this is where the conversation sort of starts to take off, where he establishes, um, the viewpoint that he was talking about. So let's go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing to realize is, we are give or take, a meter in size. The universe is maybe 10 to the 26 meters across, a one with 26 zeros, right? So we're really pretty small compared to the universe, as you say. But actually, the scale of atoms of space is probably, we don't know what it is yet, but it might be 10 to the minus 100 meters. So it's instead of whatever a 10 to the 26 is like a trillion, roughly a trillion meters. We're saying that the atoms of space are a trillion something or other Earth of a meter. So in other words, we're actually pretty big on this general scale of the
Right.
universe. But this point about sort of everything is made of the same stuff, and what does that mean? Actually, that rabbit hole goes even deeper than one might think. We know that sort of material objects in the world are made of atoms, and there are roughly 90 kinds of atoms that correspond to the different chemical elements that everything that we deal with is made of. And every one of those atoms of, carbon or something is the same as every other atom of carbon. So it's sort of surprising that all this stuff that we experience is made of a bunch of copies of the same thing. But actually, that rabbit hole goes much, much deeper than that. So first of all,
Yeah. So wow, this is a pretty big unit. We are really big in comparison relative to the size of atoms and how deep that stuff goes. I kind of knew that, I heard Donald Hoffman talk about 10 to the minus 23 centimeters. So it's a little bit of a different number, but that's pretty wild. And I know that it reduces down to probability spaces. An atom is what, 99.9999999%. They say empty space or really just a field of probability space, really. So yeah, that's pretty interesting to think about, actually, that reality actually bottoms out to just probabilities.
All those physical atoms like carbon and so on, they're ultimately made of things that come from the structure of this network where everything is just made of sort of the connectivity of these atoms of space. But then it gets much sort of worse than that, because the question is, what's the rule by which that network that represents space and everything in it progresses? Well, you might say there's a particular rule that represents our universe. And the question then would be, okay, so let's say one day we find that rule. Then we might say, well, why did we get rule number such and such rather than another rule? Why were we the sort of lucky ones that got that particular rule? It's very confusing. It confused me for a while. And then I realized that actually the right answer is that what's underneath is basically running all possible rules. The tip-off actually is the way that quantum mechanics seems to work. So in ordinary physics, you say in sort of ordinary classical physics, you throw a ball, goes in a definite trajectory. Quantum physics, the big idea is, no, it doesn't just go in one definite trajectory. There are many different paths it follows, and we only get to say the probabilities for different things that can happen.
Right. So this is that probability space that that the universe sort of runs off, probabilities, which is really interesting, which is not a physical thing in itself. It's sort of a field, a field of probability, which is really weird when you think about that. Um, Reality is fundamentally just probability spaces. And where does experience fit into all this, like human consciousness? I guess we're going to get into that a little later on. But let us continue.
So in a sense, so in these models that I'm talking about, where you're taking this whole network that represents space and everything in it, you're saying, well, you apply these rules, but it turns out there are many possible ways you can apply the rules. And those many possible ways to apply the rules give you many possible kind of threads of time, many possible histories for the universe. Each possible sequence of applications of the rule gives you a different detailed sort of thread of time for the universe. And so one of the things that you then start realizing is quantum mechanics is this story of kind of these many threads of time. And then the big mystery of quantum mechanics is, why do we think that definite things happen? And so the answer to that, I think, is that our minds are also doing this same kind of multi-threaded branching and merging thing that the universe is doing.
So it's our minds are participating in this probability space, in this field. Our minds are actually part of the field in the sense that they also branch off into these different histories and possible routes. That's really interesting. I actually have, and I'll go into it a little bit. I have my own little model of idealism, which sort of supports this kind of idea. And so it's really interesting. I'll kind of talk about that a little later if anybody would be interested in my bullshit. But yeah, let's check it out.
So sort of the story of what we perceive is the story of how does a branching, merging mind perceive a branching, merging universe. And that turns out to be, it seems, the thing that is we call quantum mechanics. But so the first step is kind of understanding these many branches of time that in the usual case of quantum mechanics, we're perceiving sort of one lump of that as the thing that is the reality that we perceive. What we then realize is actually, instead of just a particular rule being applied in lots of different ways, you can say, well, the answer to why do we get one rule rather than another is we don't. All possible rules are being applied. And then the point is that our minds effectively are at some particular, in the space of all possible rules being applied, we kind of exist at some place in that kind of space of all possible rules. And so we perceive the universe to work in some particular way. One way to think about this, I'm sorry, this is a deep rabbit hole.
I'm in there with you.
There's this thing I call the Ruliad, which is kind of the entangled limit of the result of all possible rules being applied. And the kind of the idea is that different sort of minds are perceiving different parts of this Ruliad object. So in other words, there is this thing underneath that is this very complicated thing that is sort of represents all possible computations. And our perception of it is based on existing as, we have a mind that is sort of in a particular place in that Ruliad, and different minds are in different places.
Oh, cool. So have you been able to follow any of this? I know you've been having to work with your laptop. Are you able to hear everything okay, Sophia?
Yeah, I've been listening on my phone, playing it.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like what he's saying is that more fundamental than the physical reality is this probability space, and even our local minds, if you will, like our conscious experiences. What's more fundamental to that, according to this theory, is that same probability space. So it's like we're interacting with the field, so to speak. Is that kind of what you got out of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I've got a little theory myself and a little model. Hopefully, I'll go over it a little bit, which kind of intersects with that. I just wanted to see what everybody thought about it. Maybe help me refine it a little bit as we go along. But I have to stop this video every once in a while to make commentary. Otherwise, it'll kick us off, guys. So that's why I have to stop the video so much. But here we go.
While we are all essentially made of the same things, and there's an individual difference in perception. There's an individual difference in interpretation, right? All of these things are theoretically subjective. I have a colorblind child. And so the question is, what color is it? Was something we talked about, for decades in our home. And the fact is, there is a wavelength that I can describe, right? I can describe to the best of my ability the wavelength. We are both seeing the same wavelength, but our interpretation, our perception, right, is different. So the only people who would not be surprised at this explanation would be really intensely spiritually dialed in, yogis and mystics for thousands of years, who have basically said exactly what you're saying, but from a much more, I don't want to say you're not huggable, but a much more huggable kind of perspective.
It's a
What does that mean? A more huggable type of perspective? I guess because it's cold and calculating to be a scientist or whatever. What does she mean by that?
No, what she's saying is the way that he expresses himself is very intellectual, and it may fly over people's heads. So she's saying, what are you actually saying in layman terms?
I see. Yeah. That makes sense.
General feature of kind of these questions, deep questions in science and so on, that these kinds of questions have been asked for a really long time. And back before about 300 years ago, the most serious answers came from theology, philosophy, and so on. And then kind of science took off and was very successful in lots of kinds of areas.
It did a really good job.
Right. And but those questions were not ones that science, as it had been configured, was really able to talk about. And we're finally back to a point where we can start to talk about some of those questions. And I mean, I think to your point, I mean, one of the things to realize, one of the important realizations about thinking about sort of foundations of science is, in the end, what matters is how we perceive things.
This kind of reminds me of that video I saw with Sadhguru, and he was talking to a scientist, and he was making the point that we had been us mystics, we've been talking about this stuff for thousands of years. So, actually, we don't need your science. We don't need your, big words and your big explanations and your instruments and stuff. We already knew this stuff. Thanks for catching up. And the lady was put off by it. She's like, yeah, but we're trying to intersect science with spirituality now. We're able to do that now. And Sadhguru was like, well, whatever permission slip you need, that's up to you. If that's what you need, then great. But I don't need that. I never have. It is just kind of weird. But it's so true that a lot of the science, a lot of the models, especially when it comes to consciousness and mind, are intersecting with spirituality and mysticism and things of that nature,
Yeah.
It's actually out there in the universe, the Ruliad doing all its complicated stuff. That's all sort of irrelevant. What's relevant is what a mind like ours perceives in the Ruliad.
Is that true?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, you're saying it, so I'm assuming it's true. But I wanna ask you to elaborate a little bit on it, because some people might say, well, what if my perception is off? What if I'm not feeling grateful? What if I'm depressed? I mean, I'm really trying to bring this into the level of I'm really asking you what is real.
Right. And so I think what is real to each one of us is what we internally perceive.
But it may not be accurate.
Well, what does that mean?
Right.
So just to say one piece of science and then to come back to that, one of the big things that has come out of things we've discovered in the last few years is in this Ruliad object, this kind of entangled limit of all possible computations, observers like us inevitably observe the laws of physics that we know to be the laws of physics. If we were not observers like us, we would not observe these laws of physics. Let me give a very simple example, which actually relates to scale again. It's like we believe in space. We think there's a thing like space, right? You look around, you're in some room there, it's maybe 10 meters across or something. And, you look at the other side of the room and the photons, the light that's coming from the other side of the room arrives in microseconds, and from the other side of the room. Your brain, our brains take milliseconds, thousands of seconds, thousands of times longer to process what we see. So to us, it's kind of like we're gulping in everything that's in the room in what seems like one moment of time to us. If our brains thought a million times faster, we wouldn't have that perception. We would have, and so that's one very simple example of where, and the idea that, there's a notion of space, and you can say this is the state of the room in space at a particular time, and then at another time there's another state of the whole room in space. That notion wouldn't be a natural one for us to have if we had a different kind of perception of what was going on.
So, Stephen, do you frequently freak people out? Like you make them lose their minds?
I don't think so. Not in that way.
But this is I'd like to know how you do freak people out, if not in that way. But the question is really, this rabbit hole, it can be maddening. And I think one of the things that makes it easier is math. One of the things that make it easier is having nomenclature around it. It's having...
I don't know, man. I'm terrible at math. Math just confuses the hell out of me. I've never been good at math, and
some of it,
that's a language that's really hard for me to grasp. Maybe it's just the way that you have to approach it. Are you good at math?
I'm good at basic math and some, I'm good at geometry and some algebra, but once we start getting into polynomials and shit like that, it's like, nope.
Tetrahedrons, amplitude-hedrons.
Yeah, that just gets too much.
Yeah. I'm lucky if I can do 2 + 2. I think that equals 22 or something like that.
Computation around it. It's having a structure and a place to put it. And as someone who spent many, many years, in the joys of calculus and, learning this other language and then trying to learn the language of organic chemistry, but not being able to. And that's why I didn't go to medical school. I wonder, for people who don't have that sort of math language, for people who don't have, that understanding, it can be very intimidating. I mean, it's intimidating for me, and I'm trying to get my head around it. What's the best way, that you can help people understand big concepts without also feeling like you're exploding people's consciousness outside of their brains?
Well, for me, the big thing is visualizing stuff. You see, I'm talking about simple programs, they do complicated things. Just see some pictures of that. It's really kind of clear what's going on. And it's a funny thing because, I'm always trying to persuade, scientists actually do some computer experiments. The computational universe is much wilder than you can possibly imagine. People have all these ideas. I had all these ideas about what would happen there. As soon as people actually do those experiments, their intuition changes. They start realizing things like you can have a very simple program, it does a very complicated thing. That's something very unintuitive to us, because usually if you want to make something complicated, you expect you're going to have to go to a really lot of effort, you're going to have some complicated plan for how it works and so on, but it isn't true. And you can just have a little tiny program, you just keep running it, it makes this really complicated pattern.
Yeah, that's kind of like what Michael Levin was talking about when we went over that video last week. That very simple rules is where the patterns emerge from, and then they intervene on the structures we see in reality. So it's all really based on very simple rules and shit. But even that, and like we were saying, I'm glad that Lex Friedman had put up those pictures and stuff, because because when he was describing all that stuff, it's kind of hard for people to understand what the fuck are you talking about, man. But having those pictures and shit helps.
Well, my problem with this guy though, is I agree with his stance. He doesn't really offer any kind of referential evidence. It's all pretty much a philosophical discussion. He doesn't really say, well, I think it's this way because we see this or that. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, he sounds way too complicated, and he gives all these viewpoints without really explaining why. That's just how I take him, because I'm trying to figure out what kind of work has he actually done that would convince somebody, right? Now, when we're looking at somebody like Michael Levin, though, he has actual evidence of what he's talking about, like the whole thing about cognition without a brain and things like that. Like, he does actual
experiments, like anthrobots and all of
work
this stuff.
that
Yeah,
gives us something tangible.
Yep.
Right. And so this guy here, I mean, he sounds like he's on to the same thing, but he don't give me nothing tangible, why he thinks that,
And yeah, and he's considered very cutting edge and controversial, but in a way, a lot of what he's saying, I've kind of always understood it that way, unless my understanding was just fucking wrong. But I don't think so. I don't think he's really bringing a whole lot new to the table. It's just that he's kind of labeling it like the Ruliad, and he's kind of it reminds me of
No.
John Archibald Wheeler, who said who framed that it from bit hypothesis, that we're in a participatory universe, and it's informational. So it's kind of going back to like information theory and stuff like that. So it's not really that different as far as I
right.
understand it, but it is
I
intersecting
mean,
with
it's
what Michael Levin's
idealism, but he's not bridging the gap. He's not bridging the Right, but he doesn't bring anything to the table that's really bridging gap for me, where I could say, okay, this is groundbreaking. This is gonna finally bridge the gap between mysticism and science, right?
It's mathematics.
Just pretty much giving his opinion, his belief,
Yeah.
his
And
mathematics. I still get to see how it
mhm.
proves idealism.
Yeah, the only thing I think Michael Levin said it last
Shit, man, I think I'm
weekend on
lagging.
that show. Yeah, you're lagging. But Michael Levin was basically saying the same thing, that, biology is where all of these theories sort of take shape and you can actually see them in action. Whereas the mathematics is just descriptive, it's just theory, hypothesis, and you need to have that experimental, empirical evidence to go along with it, because you can do math wrong. Even if the math is coherent internally, it can be misapplied until you actually run the experiments. And I think that, he's run some experiments. I think so. I think I've read something. I haven't gone that in depth on Stephen Wolfram. But anyways, let me continue on.
I think it's worth saying something about what I at least see science is, so to speak. So, there's the universe out there. It's doing all the things the universe does. And there's our minds, which are capable of certain kinds of things. I think the role of science is to try and make this bridge between what the universe actually does and the kind of narrative that we can carry in our minds. So in a sense, it's the goal of science to try and make that translation. Now, how that lands and how complicated the thing that the narrative ends up being to be able to describe in certain ways, that's a detailed question. Over the course of the history of our civilization, so to speak, the level of sophistication of that narrative has gotten greater, and we've been able to deal with sort of higher levels of abstraction. There are things, one of the things that I suppose is sort of difficult at some level is, we all grow up in a world where there are physical objects we can pick up, and we're used to certain kinds of things about the way the sort of mechanical world works. Then we say, well, let's talk about this abstract world, which is perhaps a generalization of that mechanical world. That abstract world is not one that we just spent decades learning about from our everyday experience. It is one where, if you do computer experiments and so on, you do get, I've spent enough time in sort of the computational universe. I don't know what the ratio, it's probably a small fraction of my total lifespan, but I've spent enough time kind of in the computational universe that I feel somewhat at home there. And I think that's, I think I'm not unique in that, in the fact that that's what's going to happen if you.
All right. So looks like the experiments that he's run are computer experiments, computational experiments. I'm just not familiar exactly with what they are. Maybe he'll talk about that, but it's always good to have an experiment, like you said, to bridge the gap, to kind of show
Yeah,
how it makes sense. You know what
I'm
I
pretty
mean?
sure I wouldn't understand any of it though. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I wouldn't understand his computations at all. So I'm just saying that's way beyond me.
Yeah, me too, if I'm being honest. Hell, I mean, I'm just kind of taking him at his word. And from everything I've looked at, he doesn't have a whole lot of criticisms. The criticisms that he does have is that most of his theory is just based on mathematics. That's what I've heard. I think Sabina Hossenfelder had some critique of him. I saw a YouTube video where she was like saying, "Yeah, but everything he's saying is math, and we're gonna need more than just your math to really understand what it is you're trying to really say, because
But if
it's
math
it,
is just a human system or language to describe like physical reality, how would math describe consciousness or calculate consciousness? That would be interesting to look into.
yeah." Dave asks, "Is math more than a language?" Some people think so. Some people say math is the foundation of reality. Physicalists, which I think they should be called mathematical idealists. because math is a description. It's what we use to describe reality. I don't know if math was used before humans came on the scene. I don't know if lower level animals do math. I think I've heard that bees understand like the concept of zero and stuff like that. But still, I don't know if that really means that math is the foundation of the universe. It's kind of like we can imagine anything. Humans can create all kinds of languages and concepts, like, say, um, gods and stuff like that. And then we just say, well, the universe is based on God because we describe God as that thing that created all of the universe. But that's kind of like defining shit into existence. And so math is, people that talk about math that way, I wonder if that's all they're doing, just trying to describe the world into existence that way.
But have you ever heard of like Native Americans who say there's such a thing as sacred geometry, and then in a lot of like sacred texts, Jewish, Christian, and things like that, or whatever sacred, religious text, there's like geometry and mathematics in there, like the Kabbalah and then the whatever
The Akashic
they talk
record.
about, right? But yeah, no, not that, because I'm talking about where dimensions and mathematical dimensions and stuff come into play. That's described in their scriptures or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who do psychedelics, right? DMT and such things, or ayahuasca. I mean, even shrooms, which I did recently, and I couldn't fucking stand it. I'm not ever doing that again. But
I don't like.
The geometric shapes and stuff, I've seen that myself. Like everything kind of like breaks down into geometrical shapes on these psychedelics. And I wonder if our instinct to create like mathematical systems to describe reality, what if there is like a base geometry or something that everything is based on? I don't know. I'm just freestyling. I'm just wondering where that comes from. Like, because people go ahead.
No, you're talking about the same thing that Donald Hoffman talks about. And matter of fact, I'll play a little bit of his video in a bit, because I think it applies. It sort of um intersects with what Stephen Wolfram here is talking about, just in a different way, I guess. So I'll probably try to play a little bit of that. In fact, I think these. In fact, let me do this. This will be pretty interesting. In fact, I'm going to switch over because these two. This will probably be interesting. I just saw this, as a matter of fact, just when I was doing a search just now. Basically, Donald Hoffman and Stephen Wolfram get together and have an interview. So I've never seen this before.
Oh, wow.
And it's on the Kurt Jaimungal channel, which he's a big guy into philosophy of mind and science and things of that nature. So yeah, let's just take a look at this really quick. I'll go ahead and share this. This may be a good surprise for everybody. And this will get into exactly what you're talking about, Sophia, about the geometric shapes and things like that. Because that's what he talks about all the time.
And you can't convince me either that you have it. It's a matter of me just believing that you're relevantly similar to me in certain ways. So I absolutely agree that there's no proof of anybody else. Solipsism is certainly a logical possibility, right?
But you believe that I might have those internal experiences, but you don't believe that the LLM could have those internal experiences.
Well, so it's a little more complicated. So I'll say a little bit more about. So I think that our experience of space and time and physical objects is just a headset. So it's my consciousness is created a headset to interact with other consciousnesses. And so when I look at you on the screen, for example, all I see is pixels. And the pixels on the screen, I wouldn't want to say are conscious. But through the pixels, I'm getting a portal into, I think, your consciousness. I can guess what you're thinking about and guess what your beliefs might be right now and so forth. Probabilistically and not all completely accurately. But I wouldn't want to say that pixels are conscious. They're just part of my headset that's giving me access to the consciousness. So I want to say that consciousness is fundamental. It's the fundamental existence. And what we call space-time is a fairly trivial headset that some consciousnesses use, but probably most don't. Probably there's a variety of much more interesting headsets out there than just a four-dimensional one that we're using. And so no thing in the headset is conscious, just like the pixels on the screen aren't conscious. And some pixels give me access to your consciousness and others don't, but I wouldn't want to call some pixels conscious or not. So ultimately, I think I'm always interacting with consciousness. I'm always interacting with consciousness.
Wait a minute. So if you see a frog, are you interacting with consciousness inside the frog or not?
Not inside the frog, but it's sort of like the frog is like the pixels on my screen that's giving me access to certain aspects of consciousness.
So, but the frog internally has a feeling of, I don't know what it might have a feeling of, a mosquito or something like that, a feeling of it has an inner experience.
All right. Yes, we understand, Stephen. So let's say there's a frog feeling sub 1 and then a frog feeling sub 2.
Well, yeah, I would say that there is a conscious experience that I'm interacting with, a conscious experiencer or series of experiences behind the frog. And in the case of the LLM, there is going to be, beyond the headset, conscious experiences, but it's not going to be what we typically think of as somehow a physical machine gave rise to consciousness. It's rather that even the very components of the computer that are running the LLM are like pixels on my headset. And behind that is consciousness. Absolutely.
What you mean? So it's like the LLM is the digest of 8 billion souls, and it's that's the way you see it.
That's right. So it's really a bunch of conscious agents outside there, outside of space-time, and we are opening different portals into consciousness beyond our headset, just like pixels.
So we humans are sort of the ultimate seat of those elements of consciousness, in your view. Is that right?
Oh, not at all. We're probably among the less sophisticated ones.
So, yeah, this gets really hard to understand for a lot of people because all of this is very super theoretical, the way that they're breaking this stuff down. I mean, does any of this stuff make sense to you? Uh-oh, I think you're muted. Let me unmute you. Unmute yourself.
Sorry. My main issue with Donald Hoffman is his headset analogy, because that would make your experience not real, your physical experience. It's like saying you put this headset on and you have this experience, but you're not really experiencing it. It's just all happening on a mental level. And so
excited that the folks at AG will teamed up with me and
molecular scale copy.
So I guess I'm a little bit different from idealists, because in my model, consciousness is primary. It just is, like aliveness just is. There's no creation. And I think that the properties of mind and physicality already exist, simultaneously. Because think about it. If your experience is just like a headset experience, what would be the point of physical decay, entropy? Why does our body break down and stuff like that? Like, why do we feel actual physical pain and all this kind of stuff? Like, what would be the point of being healthy, taking care of your body, or getting in shape? If none of it's real, right? Then you could not really give a shit about any of that and tell yourself, oh, this is just all happening in my mind. And I don't know, that doesn't sit right with me. So while that's a pretty cool analogy, I just think it's missing something. And that's the actual reality of the physical reality. You see what I'm saying?
So how is that different than, like, because that's the reason panpsychists are not idealists, is that's the exact argument they make. A panpsychist says that the problem with idealism is they reject physicalism, but we know physicalism is very real. It has a very real consequence on our life. So we try to say, panpsychists try to say that it's consciousness and the physical that both come up at the same time, both just as real. Whereas the idealist says, though the physical is not real, it's just the mind that's real. And the physical just appears in consciousness. And so you're having a real experience, but that's all it is an experience. Whereas the panpsychist takes it a little bit further and says, no, it's not just an experience. It's a real experience because it's a real fucking thing. The physical world actually exists.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of share that view. I share the view of everything happening within consciousness, right? Like an idealist, but at the same time, the physical experience is a real physical experience. Obviously. I mean, I don't understand that part, when it comes to idealism. And I wouldn't say that I like consciousness is, I guess, primary, but like in my model, it's neither consciousness or physicality that comes first, right? It's not matter produces consciousness or it's the primordial state of consciousness already is physical, but
Yeah, that's panpsychism.
on a
Yeah.
level of like frequency. That's why I compare it to cymatics, right? The process of cymatics. Obviously that doesn't prove consciousness, but it kind of you can make a logical inference, and say that that might be how consciousness works, right? It's frequency that has the ability to self observe, and the more that it observes itself, the more physical it becomes, or the more meaning it creates through physicality. Like energy exists, it can't be destroyed, it's not created. And the same way we accept that, right? We know that it only transforms. So it's like hermeticism really is what it is. So yeah, I'm more in that category. I don't believe that it's just an illusion, because that's what that analogy suggests. You put on a headset and then you're having an illusionary experience. And then when you take the headset off, then what? What happens then,
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, even physicalists also use the headset analogy in a way. They may not use it explicitly, but like physicalists say that reality is an illusion too, because they say that actually your brain is a real thing, which this is the really, really weird thing. Like, they say brains are real, but they say the stuff that your brain observes is not real. It's just an illusion, because they say what happens with the brain is you take in photons, sound waves, all of these things, and your brain constructs a reality out of it. So what your brain see is not the real reality itself, but it's just the construction that your brain developed, which in a way seems a little self-refuting, because brains are part of the observation. So are brains illusions? Are brains not real? There's something
right?
weird
So
about
that's
that
why,
too.
right? That's why I say, like, the way I see it, very simplified, because I'm not a fucking very, I guess, intellectual person, but um the same way you are a human being, potential to think, that is all there, right? Of course, you have limitations as a human being, but you can create a vehicle to get you around better from point A to B, right? So the vehicle is like an interface that you created with your hands and your logic and your thought process, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that primordial consciousness is like a field of infinite potential that already has the ability to create all that is. You know what I mean? So if you see everything as an interface that consciousness uses as a vehicle to express itself, that doesn't mean there needs to be some kind of creator outside of that or whatever. Like, it's all coming from consciousness, is what I'm saying, the physical and the mental at the same time, because it's kind of like how you work as a human being. You have to have a thought before you can create anything, and thought always comes first, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just see it like that. I don't understand how dead matter can just miraculously produce consciousness. It makes more sense that consciousness and physicality is one thing. There is no real true separation. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
non-dualism. Yeah, yeah. That's how I see it too. It's just that underlying. I think that it's kind of obvious that underlying both physicality and consciousness is something else, something that Michael Levin points to. Um, something else that creates a pattern that superimposes itself onto the physical and the appearance itself. Um, you know what I mean? And so, like, yeah, like Dave asked, how does solipsism apply in such a way as to account for hunger? I don't think it can, and this is the hard problem with solipsism. Why are people surprised? Why are people not in control of the external world? Why do they account for things that they did not create in their imagination? This is the hard problem of solipsism, and why solipsism has a hard problem getting off the ground. And then Logan, I think, says that would be an argument from incredulity. So to say you don't understand, so just to be clear, are you saying that which one is an argument from incredulity? Is it the fact that we can't understand how um consciousness creates matter, and so if you don't understand that, that would be an argument from incredulity? I'm not sure. And he says, as I always say, if solipsism were true, Salma Hayek would be my love slave. Exactly. But yeah,
So
Logan,
I'm
be more
confused.
specific, if you can. Go ahead.
Isn't solipsism, I'm confused. Isn't solipsism when you believe your mind is the only thing that exists?
Yeah, your mind is the only thing that exists on solipsism.
What's the question about that? Because I do not believe in no solipsism. That's absurd.
Yeah, Donald Hoffman said solipsism in theory could be true. Logically, it could be true. But he doesn't subscribe to solipsism. But
He
he says,
said, Hoffman.
yeah, yeah, Donald Hoffman says it could be true, not that it is true. He's not a solipsist, you know. But then Logan asked something
Yeah,
similar.
no, I don't.
When Sophia said she didn't understand how consciousness can arise from the brain. Okay, so that was an argument from incredulity. So how would you respond to
Well,
that?
that's true. That's true. Like, what I would say is that's the hard problem of consciousness. We can't demonstrate how consciousness, or we don't yet know the process of how consciousness could arise from matter. True, exactly. But I think that my LFM model offers a better explanation if it were to be the other way around. And so That is a philosophical model, though. I'm not passing that off as fact, but I believe that it is coherent, and maybe even more so, because that eliminates the hard problem of consciousness. There's no longer the question which one came first. It just is. And I think it's human limitation, the limited mind of a human. And that's why we ask things like, oh, well, if I exist, who created me? Or how did this come about? We always think that there has to be a creator, but what if there is no creation? What if there just is life and it does what it does and it just is?
What if there's no
I'm
free
not
will?
passing. Well, there may not be, most likely there isn't.
We do,
Because
and so
if you look at it, at the end of the day,
go ahead.
we have very limited free will, I would say.
So Logan says we do know
Because
physical effects affect consciousness. Yeah. So what does that mean?
yeah, but that doesn't. The only thing that would mean within my model is if consciousness creates vehicles to express itself that I will start calling interfaces. Just because the interface is affected and changes a conscious state, that doesn't prove materialism.
So us knowing that,
in other words, if you're using an interface and you make a physical change to the interface, it could change your experience, but that doesn't prove materialism.
right, but I think he's saying that the physical effects, like say if you were hit in the head with a shovel, your conscious experience would change. So doesn't that prove that consciousness is dependent on physical stuff? Like if you didn't have a brain, you wouldn't be conscious. Or if someone blew your brains out with a gun.
All it shows is correlation, but not causation. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. That's the first thing. That's kind of like saying we know that if you break the radio with a hammer, that it no longer expresses music. Therefore, radio waves are generated by the radio. And we know
No,
that
you
that's
didn't
not the
kill the
case.
radio
We know
wave.
that radios.
You just right.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, Joel has a good point here too. How do we show causation? And so that's a really deep question, because causation, that's another thing that may be unintuitive. There may be no causes at all in the world. It may just be all in our mind that we interpret the world by causation, but actually there is no causation, because
That
at
was
some
what I was
point,
trying to say.
yeah,
The fact that we think something had to cause consciousness may be just a result of our limited minds, right?
right. The only way you can show causation is through an appearance, like the way that we observe things as happening. But we also know that at a deeper level, there's this thing called retrocausation, where things in the future somehow affect things in the past on a very microscopic level. So reality isn't necessarily what how the human brain interprets it, possibly. So, you've got block theory of the universe, B theory of time, where actually all time is equally real. Past, present, future, all equally real. There is no causation. It's all just there. And that consciousness is what actually determines causation or observes causation. So Logan says, and what about parsimony? Yeah, that's a good question. Physicalism is not as parsimonious as idealism. I know that's for sure. It's more dualistic, and it requires so much. So depending on what you mean by parsimony, and in fact, we've gone on along with this video, so I'd like to share the stage. That way we can have a real conversation if you guys would like to come on, and instead of just engaging on the chat, I'm going to put up, as I always do, the backstage link. So y'all call on in and let's have a conversation in real time, because it's kind of hard to go back and forth in the chat and really make sense of it. So if you want to do that, but yeah, like I was saying, causation may be kind of a user illusion. Just like free will is kind of like an illusion too, because we don't see the future. We don't see everything in front of us. So it makes it seem like all the choices we make are so that we can make the right choice to get us on the right path that we want to go. But according to B theory, it's already been done. It's all set in stone. It's deterministic. And so it's not intuitive. You know what I'm saying? And so why would we expect everything else to be intuitive about life? That's why we have philosophy and metaphysics.
The thing about it is, it really just doesn't even really matter at the end of the day. Because, like, let's just say the brain does generate consciousness, then the fact would still remain that somehow material things or physicality exists. So either way, whether it's consciousness or physicality that exists first, the fact is it just exists. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
Now,
I mean, it's
how it transforms and how it evolves and all of that, I think it's all directly tied to evolution. Whatever it is, it evolves. It experiences growth and it becomes more complex and all that kind of stuff. But was there necessarily a beginning? I mean, I don't know. Maybe not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because causal influence does not equal ontological production. Dependence does not equal identity. So, like it may seem parsimonious to think that physical effects will affect consciousness, because physical interventions clearly modulate consciousness, like drugs alter mood and perception, brain injuries change personality or memory, stuff like that. But none of that by itself shows that consciousness is generated by the physical system, rather than being really constrained or filtered or shaped by it, especially if all the information that we already know, that Michael Levin's work shows that before neurons there's pattern, and that's really what shapes the mind as we know it. We have that evidence right now. You know what I mean? And I think we have somebody popping in. It's Dave. What's going on, Dave? How you doing, sir?
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
Yes, I'm here. Pretty good.
Good.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It's starting to warm up a little bit, so I'm gonna unzip my jacket a little bit. It was freezing in here. But yeah, how you doing today, Dave?
There are technical issues. I'm being delayed.
Oh,
There's a
okay.
technical issue. I'm
Welcome to
being
my
delayed.
world. Welcome to my world. I was born delayed.
By several seconds.
Yeah. Same here. Uh-oh.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So I think he dropped off. He'll probably come back in. And Logan, if you can jump on, please jump on, man. I'd like to discuss, because that's a really good question that curious minds would like to investigate. And I don't really want to just start rambling on and
So I
then
want to answer Logan a little more sophisticated. So I put my viewpoint into chat GPT so it can refine it a little better, because I suck at English. But basically, Logan, what I'm saying is physicality affects consciousness because it affects the interface, not because it generates consciousness. When you alter the interface, you alter how consciousness is integrated. So like I'm working on pretty much I'm extending my LFM model, and I'm working on what I call the hierarchy of consciousness, right? So first you have consciousness, and then you have the mind, and the mind isn't necessarily consciousness, or like, let's say pure consciousness, just the conscious field. What happens is, just like in Michael Levin's work, you have the bioelectric field that imposes itself on the physical or creates the shapes, right? So you have basically pure consciousness, which integrates into the interface, which is our mind, right? So all you're really doing is you're affecting the interface. So what you're doing is you're only affecting or altering how consciousness is integrated and expressed at that point and constrained, not whether or not consciousness exists at all. You see what I'm saying? So that's how I look at it. I'm not saying that's a fact. That's just kind of what I think is what's happening, right? Did that make any sense to anybody?
Hey, how's it going?
What up, y'all?
Hello.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
How's my
And
audio?
sounding good.
Okay.
Good.
Sounded really good. Sounded really good. So what do you think so far? You got any thoughts about what we've discussed so far, sir?
Yeah, the current discussion, I think the brain is a transmitter and receiver of consciousness. I don't think the brain is the originator of consciousness.
Yeah. That's kind of
Basically.
where
Yeah,
I'm coming
I
from.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be where the evidence points to. Because
So do you have a good
Mhm.
reason as to why you think that? I'm just interested at, other people's reasons why they come to those similar conclusions as such as ourselves.
I claim non-Abrahamic true monotheist. I essentially believe in a construct of the one true creator, but I don't come to it through the scriptures and dogmas of Abraham. But the way I like to explain it is that all consciousness is an extension of the omni-consciousness, that being what some people call God. But another way I like to describe it is the fractal singularity omni-matrix. Okay. And essentially, I think God is living through our lives, and therefore we are all God. But all consciousness is connected. Okay, that is the supreme unity. The four things I use to describe my perception of God is unity, consciousness, dark, and light.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I like it. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
biased.
Yeah. But what do you claim, Sophia? What do you claim? Are you atheist or?
Oh, I'm a mystic, and I live for the experience, but I basically believe what you believe, that consciousness is primordial, and
Yeah.
consciousness expresses itself through all that is, and I
Yeah.
created a model based on that, and that's kind of where I stand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't really like labels. I kind of get the sense you don't really like labels, Sophia.
Yeah, no, I stick with the big label people give me that label as of mystic, and
Me too.
I'm okay with that one, because mysticism is basically just experiencing the nature of reality directly, or having direct access to it, and that's
Yeah.
definitely me. So I'm cool with that, but I don't really take any kind of different, label.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was raised as pagan, and I claimed spiritual for a long time until I realized that spiritual isn't really specific. Like spiritual could be all kinds of different things, you know. So I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well,
Right.
essentially, I do believe in a construct of the one true Creator. I just don't like the limitations imposed on it by the dogmas and scriptures of Abraham.
Right. So the only thing though about, like, you could call it the creator, right? But I basically just say that consciousness is primordial. It's not created,
Yeah.
right? It just is. And within itself, it has the infinite potential of mind and physicality. And so with that being said, it can't create anything or transform anything, because it's more like a expression and transformation. So it can't transform anything into anything that it already isn't within itself. So I don't really see a true separation between mind and physicality. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with that, and I don't really like. I'm using the word creator, but I don't believe that everything was created. I think everything always was. I like followers of Abraham have their creation myths and theories, but energy cannot be created or destroyed. So I don't think it ever was quite created. It's just been transformed into infinite different forms.
Exactly. And so if we can accept that energy just is, why can't we
Yeah.
accept that consciousness just is?
Yeah.
Hey,
So
Dave.
that's all I'm saying.
Hello. Good point.
What are your thoughts, Dave? Since you're on.
I can agree with the notion of a single consciousness and a creator of everything, except that I see that we get hungry. I see that there's no new energy, but it certainly gets dilute. It certainly spreads out, and it can no longer be well used. So I have to include the dualistic notion in my thinking. So
Okay,
that's where
can
I'm
I
at.
respond to that, Dave?
Yeah.
Dave, can I respond to that?
Please.
I'm gonna talk to you like how I talk to myself, but not because I think that you're simple-minded, but I am simple-minded, and I have to break things down like in kindergarten for myself. So if I look at my body being an interface through which consciousness expresses itself, then just like as humans, we create things that make our human experience easier, right? So if I create a car because I want to get from point A to point B quicker, right?
Yeah.
That car doesn't mean it's infallible. It doesn't mean it may not eventually fall apart. It doesn't mean I don't have to maintain the interface. So I think that consciousness is always evolving and always trying to create a better environment and to have an easier experience. And I think it ties directly into evolution. So when you say, why do I feel hunger? Well, that's part of your interface. That's part of maintaining your interface through which
I
consciousness
agree.
expresses itself.
Well,
You see
I
what I'm
think that's
saying?
part of
So,
the flow of consciousness.
I agree. Yeah, I see subjective and objective. I don't see them separate. I don't see a monism. I see a dualism there in what you're saying. But I agree with you.
but okay, so I get confused with the whole dualism and stuff and non-dualism, because the way I see it is it all exists simultaneously. There is no true separation, because I mean, it's all happening within consciousness, right?
Let me explain.
Go ahead.
Let me try to explain the dualistic idea real quickly. Just think of an XYZ coordinate system, how all three vectors or all three lines are perpendicular to each other. All three exist at the same time in the one coordinate system, but you can't work with just one line very well. You have to work with at least two of them, and it works better when you use all three. That's all.
But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. Like, there's no real disagreement here.
No, there's not a disagreement between you and I. I think you're great. I just,
Yeah, I
Well,
think
I
that.
think you're great, Dave.
Yeah, I think we're all great. We just love each other. No, but I think that I think that I'm both a dualist and a non-dualist at the same time, which collapses into non-dualism in a way. Just depends on which perspective you're coming at it from. So, like, if you were
You
to
know what that
say
reminds me of?
what?
I'm sorry, I have ADHD, but that just took me to that place. You remember when that Christian was on our show and he was trying to say that the man owns the woman,
Yeah,
but then it also says that the woman owns the man, and I'm like, well, that cancels out ownership, dickhead.
right. Gotcha. Neo, how you doing, man?
Good.
Hello.
I wanted to go into hardcore mathematics. You laid the trap here, so I'm here. There's the cheese.
Okay. Logan says so.
Um,
Before you were born, where was your consciousness? There was no your consciousness at that point because you
Well,
weren't
what I would
developed.
say is, what I would say, Logan, is I ask this question to everybody who asks a similar question to me. Did the potential of you existing exist before you existed? If the answer is yes, then that's the answer. The potential has always existed before anything happened, right?
Hmm. And that kind of comes up to a thought I had recently about what's the difference between existing potentially and existing um in actuality, because how do we know that we're not just existing as potentials right now? We just say that we're existing as actual beings because it appears that way. But I mean, how do we really know that?
well, time, entanglement
Well,
are critical. The arrow of time seems to be important to me, I think.
Hmm. So the arrow of time.
everything is always potential, though. Everything is always potential. Like potential evolves, obviously. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but once the arrow of time is passed, as soon as you have been born, you can't be reborn again in the same physical sense. I'm not disqualifying somebody going through a religious experience, but if you physically are born, you can't be born again, can you? I mean,
well,
entanglement has
it
occurred, so
depends.
No, I don't think.
it's
I don't
it's
think
one
so.
direction.
I don't think that you.
It depends on your
Yeah, I don't
physics.
think that
Like if
you're
you're talking a
reborn, but
particle
I
or
think
wave,
that.
Uh-oh, there's a lag.
but
Go ahead, Neo.
Yeah.
Let he's gonna say
um,
something.
yeah, I try and answer that. Like I say, it's not a particle or a wave, but an internal self transformation of the entire universe. So it's like I've got some crazy. I straight up do want to go into this Ruliad thing because I have a
Yeah,
definition mathematically of
sure.
absolute infinity. I actually I think I found the upper limit of the universe itself mathematically. Like there's this thing called nth set theory. So previously they only got to Ryo's number in terms of like it's a first order it's kind of like whatever you can come up with plus one is like this logic rule they came up with and it's first order, so you got like addition, multiplication, exponents, that's like first, second, third order. So I do a strictly three-dimensional mathematics, so it's like you have okay, again, x, y, and z. That's somebody just said that 2 seconds ago, and that's all you have. And then they're orthogonal to each other, so they all relate to each other in like right angles. That's what would make like first, second, and third order, like how they relate to each other. And then each of those is a dimension, and it doesn't like have a positive and negative. It has like radians, so it's like a particle, and then like a larger element, larger element, larger element. So it actually just gets like larger, and that's like one, two, three, four. And so like you literally have a way of explaining. God, I should probably just draw this diagram. I can do that after I kind of explain briefly. that there's like 3, 6, and 9, like Rodin and Tesla were saying. It's like you have like an infinite set, and then another infinite set, and then another infinite set, and each radian is like 1, 3, 6, 9, and then so like absolute infinity would be an infinite set of infinite sets of infinity, basically. So you can mathematically plot this where it's like the second order, which is called Bigfoot, hasn't been answered, but you can answer it by using this orthogonal relationship of like nested orthogonal sets. And then I named the third order Bertha because I thought it was funny. Because that's just like, it's thick. And then each of those is like these sets of three, and then they nest like these sets of three, and then you can like actually instead of a number exactly, it's a logic rule. So it's like it's literally infinite, but you can find and define the edge of like the infinite universe logically. And then you have some way of having a limit where you can then have like objects within the total universe are paradoxically like coexist. So you don't need particle wave theory. You can say that like an internal self transformation of the universe as a whole is energy transference and flux itself. So that's how like well, electrons and photons would be the same thing then, and that's how you solve the dual slit experiment, which is that uh, because it's a kind of mathematical state of flux, but it's physically there. But you can see in x equals 2 times x over 2 that sort of if you play it, if you do this is hard to explain. So it's like the real equation is like psi equals alpha operator x operator omega. And the operator function can be like any other math function. It's like an function from which the rest of them come. So you can kind of interchange like multiplication, subtraction, division, whatever you want interchangeably. So if you run it with like the standard like simplified x equals 2 times x over 2, you can run it forward where it's like multiplication first, but if you run it division first, you get these like 0.5s. Now there is no 0.5 because everything's like a whole natural number. It's all just particles, like objects. So what you would end up seeing is like these kind of flux positions, and that's how like when you interfere with the particle by hitting it with another particle, it would cause it to become like a completed like particle as such instead of a state of flux, and then that would just hit the thing and would create straight lines. Whereas if you just like let it like just scatter instead of interfering, it will hit the plate in the back and then just become particles like when it hits the plate, like energy transference.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Gotcha.
never a point at which there's never a point at which it's like waves and particles. So I got past the like uncertainty principle, and it's back to like Newtonian deterministic. It's entanglement is because like space is actually a substance, so it's contiguous and they're touching the entire time, so it's not like a abstract mathematical anomaly. There's no spooky action at a distance.
So is this addressing what Dave said there? Like how that might apply to what Dave was saying?
It is in part. It is in
Okay.
part. I disagree with part of what he's saying, and I agree with part of what he's saying. I mean, he's got a point, but I do see a negative. I see I, J, and K, for example, as the basic 3 unit vectors, and I use the right hand rule. Since I use the right hand rule, the left hand rule would obviously be negative. So I see how it can go in both directions. But other than that, I kind of agree that that you can in fact get to the set of sets. I have no problem with set theory. That's totally agreeable to me.
So it's like we're talking about if positive and negative exist. I mean, in my theory, it would just be like radians and then less of them. So there's definitely room for like subtraction, division, all that kind of thing in number theory. But I just don't think that on the dimension line there's like positive and negative in that way.
Well, how do
And
you
then
account for
like
thermodynamics?
thermodynamics. In what regard are you talking about? Like What do you mean, like conservation of energy, like how things move, or what?
There's entropy.
Oh, there is no entropy at all. I like if you go into how I just said, photons and electrons are the same thing. There is no entropy because you don't have it doesn't come from the nucleus. It's not a nucleus force. So there's no decay in a vacuum at all. It's actually interaction. And they've done some recent like experiments because people do kind of listen to this wackadoo stuff that I say, and they've isolated particular atoms like, and there's no inherent eminence like emanation radiation per se. It's interaction sort of on the orbital level. So we got to kind of
Mhm.
radically redefine some of these terms.
Do you know the acronym CEMENT?
No.
Okay, cement represents all the forms of energy transfer: chemical, electrical, mechanical, electromagnetic, nuclear, and thermal. And nuclear physics basically works under there, and you're absolutely right about the proton. The stability of the proton and therefore the atoms is just incredible. Yeah, I've heard estimates of like 10 to the 10th to the 80th power for the duration of a proton. But the other forms of energy transfer seem to be very effective too. So I still get hungry, and the doesn't your wouldn't a theory of everything, including what a monism is or a creator, wouldn't it have to be able to account for the fact that I get hungry? And I think you probably get hungry too. Do you get hungry too?
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to create a perpetual motion machine. I just described that there's energy transference, but it's not entropic. So it's like there's just energy transference like through interaction. So I mean, I could absolutely like lose energy from my body by moving and interacting with things. Um, yeah, I don't know how to approach like, do I get hungry? Sure. I'll take that in good faith instead of as like some kind of ad hominem, because I don't think you are.
It's
But
worth
no,
thinking about.
it's not a perpetual motion theory. Because it's like it's not a singular emanating structure. There's literally multiple different like prima materia like particles that I just explained like how entanglement exists. Like it's a paradox. It's not a quanta in a void. It's a like root paradox particle that
Mm.
shows you the structure of like categories, like how you can elaborate x equals 2 times x over 2 as a natural number series. So it is like a tautology of like identities that are a series which can show you like different um, progression of elements, and then each of those like are just individual particles that literally there can be multiple, and then you can understand how they relate to each other like geometrically, um like in thermodynamics, like the entire thing. Yeah, controlled entanglement. um it's not uncertainty anymore. I built a bunch of computer software that runs on this because it uses like nested squares, and uh, actually a different form of binary. It uses like nested, um, like 3D state space orthogonal like root operators, which allows you to like skip all these clock cycles. And it's like disgustingly insanely powerful. They've been putting it in the mid level code of a lot of these like AI, because the P equals NP problem. It's impossible to do these large numbers without. I mean, it's kind of like compression. They don't really use the root logic as much, but you can see everything as a series of nested structures, and it actually mechanically reduces the number of iterative clock cycles in a computer. So it's very much a real ordering principle that applies. And then they've been working on these batteries that, again, are public, where they have taken this principle that there's like no decay in a vacuum, and this isn't quantum; it's
Mm.
new. So
So it's
you know the
proof of
topic,
concept.
but yeah, material proof, because they're vacuum gap batteries. Like it's a superconductive, it's like space as a material, instead of like dark matter or you know, space time or any of this stuff. It's just like it's like a form of matter itself, like a solid object basically, and mass would be like the edge between I call it white matter and black matter to try and simplify it. Um, and so it's like it acts as like an absolute exclusion, which is why superconductivity works. It's like lead shielding space, and so you get like vacuum gap batteries allow for like superconductivity. So they won the Nobel Prize for this. This is actually my work. I'm not going to get into the drama, but yeah, vacuum gaps, like materials that
Vacuum
allow
gap
superconductors.
materials. Huh.
Yeah, there's gaps like, you know, they align the materials such a way that the energy transference like gets wave guided kind of like by the material through like a vacuum space. So they're
So
quite proven already.
okay, so like for vacuum systems, like common materials, what you're talking about, like stainless steel, aluminum, copper, and ceramics for chambers?
Uh, anything, because
Okay.
it's not the materials themselves that are superconductive, it's the space. So it's actually not, there's no such really thing as superconductive materials. It's the space that is superconductive. You can make like anything superconductive.
Ah, so the space that you're talking about is this? What kind of space is that? Like,
Yeah, this is the key to like the whole theory. So it's like you don't have a void. So there's no quanta in a void. There's no like emanation from the nucleus. And there's no like uncertainty or any of this stuff going on. It's a material. I call it like feminine matter. It's like there's two forms of matter. There's like masculine and feminine matter in like a kind of alchemical or romantic kind of frame.
hmm
But the way they relate to each other is not exactly equal. It's there's an arrow of time. So anyway, it's matter. Like you have to imagine it like kind of the inverse. Like it's a piece of Swiss cheese, and all the like white matter is just like the black matter looks like a piece of Swiss cheese, and the
hmm
line between them is like solidness. Like when you touch something, it's like you're touching the edge of it. You never touch anything
ah,
other than the edge of stuff. But we kind of
so the
envision the solidness as
so
like a
like the
mirrorless
meat of the
process.
potatoes is within inside the vacuum.
Um, yeah, like literally, it's not a vacuum. It's not dark matter either, because dark matter is like particles that leaves void behind it. There is no void at all. Like there's no zero at all. It's just a solid material, just like regular matter, basically.
Uh huh.
So that's a contiguous universe. Like the whole universe is entirely substance, which nobody's ever posited before. It's entirely substance all the way through.
Uh huh. And you're
Totally.
saying that this is similar to what you were working on. What do you think, Dave, about that? You're an engineer. You probably know more about this than I do.
Well, actually, I understand it from a nuclear particle point of view, but I don't see how it really deals with larger systems beyond molecular mechanics. I don't understand how it works with large systems such as a planet or a person or an animal. But I do see the continuity within nuclear physics and within perhaps other areas. I simply don't know, really. The truth is,
Oh,
I don't really
I
know.
got you. I got you on that. So, P equals NP is like the hardest computational problem in the world, is what it's called, and that has to do with like there's a set of P problems, and then NP is like pretty much just what is materially practical to do and what is not materially practical. Like we know these abstractly, like these numbers to exist, but we can't like access them by any material process or anything like that. Which, oh, you're an engineer, so that should be interesting. So it's like bio complexity, like internal to like an area, is much more complex. So it's not just about expanding outward to like, you know, larger scope, but also the internal
Mm,
complexity of things. Like it explains organic complexity,
mm,
because to solve P equals MP, you have x equals 2 times x over 2, which keeps like a sort of chunk logic, which allows you to compress via like a core root logic and make it like materially applicable because it suddenly fits in your head or like fits in a computer, and it's like it's common contractor knowledge but like turned into like a scientific specific
So in
you know, to like
essence,
break things into parts.
so what you're saying is, in essence, if everything is just substance like that, then the divisions between this thing and that thing are just kind of like abstract. They're not really, there's no real distinctions between things. It's just one big energy set or one big.
No, not exactly. It's it paradoxically relates. So it is somehow literally both and quite physically so. It's not abstract. It's the only like theory that suggests that there is a total universe and everything is part of it, but those things are themselves things, and it is just physically a paradox. So there it is like all one thing, but you can break it down into different things, and that's not just a function of mind. It's actually physically true. Um, but yeah,
So it's
to
both
finish
true.
answering his,
So
yes, they're
like
both true.
dualism and non-dualism in this context would both kind of be true paradoxically.
Well, and somebody said something earlier about consciousness, and it's like I have a kind of slightly different theory of consciousness, which is that there's like human consciousness and then like the Godhead consciousness kind of behind it. I actually kind of suggest that there's like the ultimate subjective entity and then like objective material reality is kind of like a dream, and the units that this is that I'm talking about here are what that substance is. And then human consciousness is like derivative of this greater consciousness, thus sort of explaining why like we don't have to perceive things in order for them to exist as people. But I'm ultimately, I guess you would call it like a non-dualist in that sense, or like what idealist is that the term you're using? Like I still believe that it's ultimately consciousness and then material, but then I limit like human consciousness as like a separate
Yeah, I kind of
sort
do
of
too.
derivative of the greater.
So like I came up with an idea of to kind of explain my sort of view of idealism the way I can best understand it based on everything I know, or which is subject to change. Hopefully it'll change every day. But I call it for now dynamic potential idealism. And basically, like what I'm saying is like bioelectric pattern memory and regeneration, physical matter, like say cells, is not really determining form. Rather, information states are. So, like, how Michael Levin talks about cognitive light cones and distributed intelligence. This sort of measures how far a system can sense, remember, pursue goals. It's cognitive light cone, right? So intelligence sort of appears everywhere, not only in brains. And so, like Michael Levin created these Xenobots. They're like living machines that learn without neurons. If goal directed behavior, memory, responsiveness, if these things emerge without brains, consciousness or intelligence cannot simply be reduced to neurons firing, right? And so basically, the hierarchy is kind of like fundamentally there's structured field of potential or probability, and the derivative would be a particular actual experience that resolves within that probability space, if that makes sense. Does that make any sense to
Yeah,
you?
I was in total agreement until the probability part. Um,
Hmm.
I was gonna be like, man, you're killing me. I can't. That's just correct. Like I just completely agree. Um, but I just don't agree with the probabilistic thing. Um, I would have to go into the alternative because it's not like completely rigid either. But that's a whole tangent. But just I completely agree with everything you're saying about sort of whatever you want to call it, the organism ourselves, and how we're experiencing that, and
Hmm.
like how you're breaking that down. Like, but
So
I just
help
don't
me
want to
out.
fixate
How
them.
would the probability? Because I'm not a mathematician. I'm nothing like that. I'm just going off of what the work of people like we were talking about today. Stephen Wolfram, who talks about that. Michael Levin talks about that. Like these Platonic forms of probability spaces. and from there is where these things sort of ingress upon structures like cells, brains, neurons, whatever. So what is the problem with that you as you see it?
So yeah, this is hyper autistic. So the model of the Bohr atom leads sort of immediately through an unresolving initial mathematical error in like spectroscopy and defining the electron and everything. So the model of the atom is wrong that they're using, which then leads to this like Heisenberg mathematics and like this whole uncertainty and probabilities and everything. And it's a lot
Mm.
deeper than that. It's not
Oh,
probabilistic in the sense that they're like describing things. So then I would have
is it
I
determined,
pretty
would
much
you
have
say,
to,
or is it random?
well, it's from a paradox. So I have to like give you a whole new coinage and like terminology and number theory to explain like how there is dynamism, like there actually is like there definitely is things being like uh free will or whatever you want to call it, and motion
Oh,
is variable, it is dynamic. um and but there is also a set of like rules that are not, like hardcore, like the whole universe. um
mm,
so I would have to sit here and give you a bunch of like new coinage
I
and
see. It's kind of like
vocabulary,
you'd have to
you'd have to look
unpack a
up the
lot.
terms.
And for my dumb brain, I wouldn't understand. Like
No, it's
Sophia,
not. It's not about that. It's just time. Like, we don't have enough time to give you a
yeah.
million terms and define them. You're clearly
Sophia,
smart.
do you want to run down the LFM model and maybe see what Neo could offer to that too? Because we're talking to a guy who's into this whole computation and artificial intelligence, and he's also on board with idealism and stuff like that. So do you think you'd like to run that down just to get some thoughts on that?
Well, first, I didn't understand what he's saying. Can somebody put that in layman's term?
I don't know either, because like you said, it would take time for him to really go through it. So what he's saying is that it's not really a probability space from which minds and structures and forms and patterns emerge from, but it comes from some sort of dynamic, paradoxical kind of thing. I don't know.
It's a romantic material dualism, which is actually uh okay. So I call it neither dual nor non-dual when you get down to it, because it's a thing that has no opposite, but isn't consciousness. So it's a material. It's the prima materia. I don't know how to like water that down. That it's like the romantic paradoxical union at root is singular, and then after that you have the kind of dualistic structures of category and dynamic relationship. Is all I'm saying. Like, and that's the substance of sense perceptions and experience. But then there's consciousness, which isn't that, you know.
Mm,
So that's all I'm saying. Like, it's a romantic um, physics instead of quantum, which is kind of egotistical, occultically. Like, it's uh, individual entity floating in a void. I'm saying there's no void. I'm saying that's the feminine aspect of reality is the key difference. It's a romantic conception of um, the structure of reality instead of what is actually egotistical, ultimately.
mm.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
trying to follow this as much as I can. I will say, okay, so from my understanding, you don't think that there's any real separation. You think duality and non-duality exists at the same time, right? We could say that, or did I get that wrong?
Yeah, it's holistic. Yes,
Okay,
essentially.
yeah. So,
Everything is constantly connected because space is the feminine. It's not a void.
so the what do we call the void? What's the
There is
void?
there's no void at all. It doesn't. So you got to go into like number theory. We go 0, 1, 2, 3, blah blah blah. But that's like an ancient
So you're saying
kind of
zero
like
isn't
Sumerian
nothing, right?
conception. I'm
You're
saying
saying
there's no
zero
zero at
is
all.
okay,
I'm saying
but I
things
mean zero
become a
could always
contradiction.
zero could also be seen as whole, right? not necessarily nothing.
Yeah, well, that's why I kind of am just talking about the way we like symbolically talk about things, because it gets into the nuances. Like it, in my opinion, it's actually extremely misogynistic and from the old world. But I again don't really want to go into that socially. But I don't think we should start with 0 and then 1 and then whatever, because you have a gap there that is like a conundrum in our conception, where it's like, how do you you need time for like nothing to become something. So it's a logical contradiction.
All
Right.
right, Dave.
Well,
I know you've got to run out of here, so I'm just gonna say, we will see you later, Dave. We just got a lot of people and good conversation going on. Sorry you couldn't hang out. Did you have anything else you want to say before you dip?
I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to express my views, and I have learned so much from you guys. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
All right, Dave. We'll see you, man.
bye, Dave.
Bye bye.
He's so sweet.
Dave is such a great guy. But yeah, it's
Yeah, so
Go ahead. I'm gonna get something real quick. I'll be right back.
yeah, you'll have to if you can, do you have any like material written on this or some kind of model that demonstrates what you're talking about? Because it's something I would have to like get a little more familiar with to understand what you're actually saying. Now, I
You're breaking
personally
up so
think
much
that
I can't hear you. Are you talking about like the I can't
shit.
I'm is are you talking about diagrams, like material, clear, basic evidence? Like, is that what you're
Yeah, just
saying?
something that demonstrates it so I can have a better understanding. Do you have like a
Yeah,
video made or something?
I posted a bunch of stuff on my post tab, as far as like all kinds of logic and math and like inventions and stuff, and you can reference to like um kind of, you know, they're kind of cryptic articles, but it's like mainstream articles, like a million articles in your news feed all the time, but they got to kind of try and water it down, you know, to some extent. Like
Okay.
yeah, but it's, you can just go on your Google news feed and they're talking about this stuff like every day. 'Cause, I mean, I'm out here doing like stuff that they kind of immediately are trying to contend with. So basically anything like in your Google news feed should, talking about AI or any of this stuff, I'm in the mix. You know what I mean?
Oh shit.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just elaborate my thing for a second because everybody the computer exploded. Um, so yeah, it's like you got x equals 2 times x over 2, or x squared equals 2 times x squared over 2, or x
Uh-oh.
tetrated. Are you back?
I'm back. Did Sophia
Okay,
drop
cool.
off?
Yeah, so everyone's computer's just breaking right now. I've been working
Mm.
on, you know, software where that doesn't happen so often, where YouTube and the stuff is a little bit more fluid, because it's um the total compute capacity is like straining against the assets, because we're trying to do an enormous amount of math here to like every single frame of the video is actually an enormous calculation, like transformation. It
Mm-hmm.
just, this is the P equals NP problem in real terms. Like, we're straining against our computing capacity, and with a little bit of efficiency and compression of the math, like this would work fluidly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good real world example.
Right. Hey,
Um,
Dog
I do,
Light.
I do have something to contribute on the paradox front,
They've
because
been using some of my code, but they're messing around with stuff experimentally, and they should be using just the simplified lossless mid-level compression, and then YouTube would work better. But they keep trying to like plug in all these other functions. It's skewing the math. They need to just stick to the mid-level
Stick
code
to
that
that. Go
compresses
ahead,
it, and then it
Delirium.
would work better.
it's my contention that reality, the all of creation is intrinsically built upon paradox. Okay, that is my contention. That you can't. Now, of course, there are some obvious paradoxes that aren't real or valid, but there are some paradoxes that the entire world is based off of, like some that I would say is dark and light, like an atom, for example. An atom is 99.9% empty, right? Yet everything that the world is built on is made of atoms. Like everything that you see that is solid is actually empty inside. That is an inherent paradox that is built into the fabric of reality. Just as an example.
Yeah,
You were
I'm
losing me on
completely
the
agreeing with
math
you.
stuff.
I'm just saying that the amount of like white and black in the atom is actually slightly more balanced. Like that's literally all I'm saying. It makes it much easier to make that argument because it's slightly more balanced, like the arrangement of the atom.
Well, also as part of that, when people say like an atom is 99.9% empty, I think that emptiness and darkness is actually the stargate to every other dimension, because I think everything exists at the same time and point simultaneously. And this is just a theory. But
Could you find God in that space?
well, I think that everything that it is God, which is why I say that we are all God.
So it would be that space because we're made up of that emptiness, right?
Yes. I
Okay.
actually, what I would say, what God actually is the darkness which connects everything, because darkness is the physical mechanism which connects all light. Everything said to be is connected by that darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Or, my wheelhouse is more in the philosophical area, not the math.
Yeah, me too. I'm horrible at math. I couldn't hold a conversation like that.
I was trying to follow, man, but I need pictures. I need pictures for everything you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I posted a bunch of stuff because I understand the best way to do stuff is simply and visually. So I absolutely did.
Do you
But
have a
I just
channel?
yeah, it's Neo Disestablishment is literally my channel name.
Okay,
And then
I'll
I got
check
a
it
bunch
out.
of posts and yeah,
Okay, fuck
so
you.
I just don't quite agree on the darkness part. That's like kind of like ancient Gnosticism. And that got to get into this whole it's I mean that's masonry, dude. I don't know. I'm not going to get into the again drama of anything. I'm just going
Yeah,
to try and stick to the topic.
yeah,
And it's like I don't exactly agree on like the root um image. Like it's not quite balanced. Like the model of the atom and how consciousness relates to that. And I'm just positing a slightly different more
yeah,
actually like instead of these really complicated because people think physics is like super duper smart and complicated, this
Mm-hmm.
makes it all super duper simple actually, so like your layman would have like a really practical grasp of things because it
Oh,
simplifies
nice.
just
Do you
like the
mind
random
putting
stuff.
the link in the live chat so folks can see it?
yeah. I'll check your channel out, man.
Oh man, I can't do that. I'm gonna brick my phone. Like it my stream barely works. I can't
Oh,
but you can
okay.
just search my channel. You can just
Yeah. I'll type that in.
my stream barely works.
Yeah, I'll type that in.
Um yeah, or it's a neo-modern Christianity is my what's that called? Tag. That's the at, you know. Um but yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
like I posted all this stuff and I got like proof that it works as like computer software and how like information like mechanical switches like it works, it's real. Um
You
but
should
there's
call
a
into the
series
atheist
of exceptions.
experience.
Oh my god,
Now,
they
fuck
they
that
get
show. Fuck that show, man.
they get so salty at
Those
me
fuckers.
for
Well,
I
they
don't
don't even
defend
give you a
God.
chance to present your argument.
They're
I just
professional
don't
eye
give them their
rollers.
worldview. I just don't give
Yeah.
them their worldview. I'm like, let's argue about physics first, Like
Yeah.
like you're trying to undermine my position, and then it's just like I just give you and start defending my position. Instead, I'm like, prove quantum physics exists, and they're like, what? It's like, well, that's a religion, you know? Oh
Yeah.
my God, you're going at the atheists by saying that they're a religion, you know, and you're applying science and logic. Like they don't know
So
what to do with that.
so you're Christian?
Yeah,
Okay.
like straight up. There's no this physics that I'm working on here doesn't really align with anything other than Christianity. Now
Well, something tells me though that you have a very novel perception of Christianity, though.
I mean no, like
So
it's
let's go
literally
down to
exactly the
basics.
Bible.
Let's with your permission, Neo, let's do a Christianity challenge, and it doesn't have to go into math and shit like that, but just what for the audience sake, because a lot of the folks that watch, the show, and when they think about Christianity, they think of it on a certain level, just the basic religious teaching, Sunday school level sort of thing. So do you believe that Jesus rose from the dead?
Yes.
Okay. So um do you believe in hellfire, heaven, things like that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And like as far as the world being flat and the worldwide flood, do you believe in that stuff too?
Not the flat part, and it doesn't really say flat.
It's a
But
circle.
the flood, yes, but not flat.
Okay, so you don't believe in a flat earth. Okay,
I
but you
I,
believe in
I
a
believe
worldwide
there's a
flood.
I believe there's a firmament, but that's literally just because space is water and we can go to space and it exists.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like so do you believe that the world is 6,000 years old, the universe?
Okay, I'm not sure if that's even clearly stated in the Bible, but I can tell you that like radiocarbon dating is off because we use math to like guesstimate based on again entropy and decay, which I am saying like that math is not correct. So there is no Big Bang, there's no expansion, there's no entropy, there's no heat death of the universe, and our timelines are screwed up, whatever it is. So I'm gonna go with I don't know, and I'm not super clear if it's stated so explicitly in the Bible what the age is, but I'm gonna go ahead and say don't believe in the timeline of radiocarbon dating because
Well,
it's not
radiocarbon
mathematical.
dating, what it measures organic materials up to like what, 50,000 years or so?
Yeah, we can't access that in any like real terms. So it's a mathematical extrapolation off of like decay, which I'm saying like on an atomic level doesn't work that way. So we'd have to go back and like come up with a different math to check how old things are.
Okay. So I think I got where you're coming from. So you're pretty much a traditional Christian, in my estimation, like someone who believes, you're not sure how old the earth is, but it wouldn't surprise you if it was like 6,000, 10,000 years old.
Yeah, I'm a modern person, so I'm like, scientific. But I haven't actually found anything in the Bible that has yet like been off. It's weird. I keep like checking things like scientifically and the Bible, and then I just still haven't found anything that like is
Do you
blatantly
believe in
wrong.
evolution, like by natural
Yeah,
selection?
essentially. Yeah, essentially, but it's not just natural selection. You also have like mate selection is one of the primary variables, and yeah, it's not quite Darwinian, but yeah, essentially. But I do kind of because you brought up the Ruliad and sort of like that would have to do with like evolution of forms and stuff like this as sort of
Hmm.
elaborating
Perception.
off of. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So I just wanted to get the hang of that. So I guess mainly Christianity hangs on the belief that Jesus died for your sins and was resurrected on the third day and ascended to the Father in heaven. So that's really
Yeah,
everything else
essentially.
is, I wouldn't consider that heretical, even if you didn't believe in hellfire and stuff like that. I only asked that because I just wanted to get a flavor of where you were coming from. I
Yeah,
understand
I
that the
really just
core
care about
beliefs
Jesus.
are
You know,
so.
I'm open to evidence and just, but yeah, it's the Jesus part specifically. That's it. Yeah.
So questions non-Christians have about that, right? Like the Jesus being resurrected. I how do we know that, how do you know that that happened, or why do you believe that happened?
Um, I don't really know that. I mean, I kind of do have some scientific arguments. Like I can sort of prove that some of this stuff exists, but the flip side, Jesus was like, you know, ever more blessed are those who haven't seen this directly. Like he was talking to some of the apostles, and he's like, it's, you know, they're going to have faith. Um, so you know, I mostly just have faith to the issue, and that has worked out for me. Like, um, and I actually kind of look at faith in several which ways, where it's like I just believe in Jesus, like he's like kind of like he's a good dude, like he's right, it's gonna work out, like he's got your back, like that kind of like. So even if I had some kind of proof of certain things, like that's not a challenge to faith. I believe in like God to that it's going to work out. I believe in like the good sort of like, I don't know, the apocalypse would like resolve in a positive way or something. Like that's kind of, I just believe in God, like he's a good dude, like it's going to work out, you know.
Mhm. Well, the thing about Christianity though, especially in the context to say like the first century, you know, the Jews were expecting a Messiah. You know, you had the Zealots, you had the Essenes, you had all these groups at the time, and there was a lot of different so-called messiahs that came up, you know, to overthrow Rome and bring, you know, and rebuild the temple, you know, and bring it back to its glory and this and that, you know. And so the Messiah was to fulfill certain prophecies. He was supposed to fulfill and do certain things, but it seems like many argue, especially like the Jews of the time and even Jews currently, they would say that Jesus actually turned out not to be the Messiah because he was expected to usher in an era of universal peace, which didn't occur with his first coming. He didn't gather the exiles, which was like the ingathering of all Jewish people to Israel, which was like a key messianic role, rebuilding the temple. Um, you know, he did not come from the paternal line of David, which sort of put him out of the running to be the Messiah. And then you know, the Torah observance, like a lot of critics will argue that Jesus contradicted or nullified the Torah commandments, you know, failing a bunch of key messianic duties. Um, Now, he did say that the Pharisees didn't keep the law, so do as they say, don't do as they do. You know, do as they say, not as they do. So he was a big, and you know, he said, I didn't come to, um, you know, abolish the law. I came to fulfill it, meaning he came to follow the law and fulfill it every day, which apparently he did. And I understand that the Pharisees had these laws of the elders, these traditions of the elders, and they were more in line with those traditions of men, as Jesus used to call it, as the writer said, right? But Jesus was more like an adherent to the law. Like, you know, you have to love God with your whole mind, heart, and soul. And part of that love was demonstrated by fulfilling his law. And so then, you know, Christianity sort of changed up to where, you know, it's not, you don't have to follow the law. You know, it's about Jesus died on the cross and his blood, you know, redeemed us. And now we don't need the law to be considered righteous and all of that kind of stuff. Jesus never really said himself. And like everything else, he didn't fulfill some of the key prophecies. And, you know, according to the law, if you follow a false prophet, you know, that was damning. Like, not only should that false prophet be stoned to death, but you should too for following a false prophet. So, how do you reconcile all that stuff as a Christian?
Um, so I think I kind of call it regime Christianity. And I really like Machiavelli a lot because it's like you can't explain the story of Jesus at all without the episode of him driving people out of the temple. Because, like, hear me out. So, within literally 1 week of this incident, he was crucified. And it's like no one ever brings this up, and it makes complete sense of the story. So he physically assaulted the like leadership of the entire area, which is like what, a protectorate or whatever you want to call it of Rome. So, but for the Jewish sector, he literally just straight up went to the Capitol, physically assaulted the leadership, and then was crucified. Like, I that's probably the inciting incident, for the crucifixion, and that happened immediately, like immediately. So he absolutely didn't say like don't follow the law. He showed up like dad with the belt, somehow tanked 100 or more guys, including like guards with swords, like just by himself, just yeeting tables through the air, like furious, just chasing people all over the place, just beating the crap out of them, like until they all literally fled. And then he stood around, and they're like, he was giving teachings, and he just like stayed there. And they're like, okay, so he's occupying the Capitol. We can't get back into the Capitol. What are we gonna do? Somebody go get the Romans. Like, is what happened. Um, so that definitely doesn't. That's the Passion Week. That's all within an immediate time frame, and being basically part of the story of the crucifixion directly. It definitely doesn't say anything about not following the law. He came in, and if he was perfect, it was the perfect whooping. You know what I mean? He soloed 100 guys. Like, he's dodging shoes like George Bush. Like, it's like reality is just warping around him. They can't. He's just eating like three guys aside and just chasing people with this whip. Like, and they the fear of God is being put in these people, and they're like, oh, okay, and they ran and got the Romans because they like he literally just is occupying the capital, and he's like, I am God, I am the rules, and he's like teaching people, and some of them come like like kind of come back like, okay, dude, I got to ask you like questions while we're at it. You know what I mean? They try to put like challenges to what he's talking about. Like, because you have to understand, like, put aside all the legalisms and civility and stuff. He just violently, ruthlessly beat their ass, and they're like, bro, we can't get this
Right,
guy out
but
of the building.
Jesus was sort of like Bar Kokhba, and
Okay.
Bar Kokhba, led a physical military rebellion, and and he himself challenged the Roman authority, but also the internal Jewish figures, right? So he was aligning with a much more militant messianic ideal, and was sort of in a more harsh sort of approach to his messianic claim. And then, like, also the zealots, they were the zealots, they were like a group of freedom fighters, and they also advocated like armed rebellion against the Roman occupation. um they had violent methods, and they would do all sorts of stuff that would get themselves crucified all the
Yeah,
time
that's
in
a little
history.
bit imbalanced. Like, Jesus was talking to Pilate, and it's like, legal technicalities. Like, this doesn't count as like an insurrection. He asked him, what was it? It was something like, um, it was like, are you claiming to be king? And he's like, not of this place. So he didn't break like Roman law. He didn't start like he soloed it. Like, he didn't bring like an armed insurrection. He didn't like claim to challenge the like earthly authority of Caesar. So Pilate was like, man, like, just for pragmatic reasons, we got to like crucify this guy. But he actually answered that directly. He did not stage like an insurrection. He just soloed the whole situation, and then was like,
Yeah, yeah,
no, I'm
yeah,
not
absolutely.
overthrowing the political authorities.
Yeah, he, a lot of people that sort of may critique it, they'll say like, yeah, well, Peter denied him, his disciples were expecting one thing, and then it turns out the dude got nailed to a cross and
Next they're
thrown
like, oh
into a,
shit, the Romans are coming.
like, oh fuck, like this is
Oh
really our
shit, man,
Messiah
was it
right
really?
here. Yeah, and then they turn around, and they'll be like, well, no, what we'll do is we'll say his kingdom is in heaven, and we'll write this whole script post hoc to say that actually Jesus taught his kingdom was in heaven, not here on earth. And that kind of like, squares, fits, makes the square circle, so
No, I mean Jesus was flexing on them. He's like, I'm a higher authority, but he was, he spent his whole life. It's kind of strange, like that he was so educated about scripture, just coming from like being a carpenter and everything. But obviously, there's some explanation about how he got educated about stuff. But no, he spent his whole time like litigating and screaming at authorities and stuff, basically
oh yeah,
about
no
like
doubt,
his
that's at
legal
least
issues.
like one of the things that, you know, kind of creates room for doubt for me on the Christian narrative is the fact that, for one thing, there are no contemporary um sources of Jesus stories. They're all after the fact, and then even the writers of the Bible are pretty much anonymous. um in our earliest gospels come out like, what, 50, 60 years later after he died. And then on top of that, the claims of, the miracles and all that kind of stuff that stretches credulity, you know
Hmm.
and so there's a lot of
I'm
stuff
super
in
in
there that
favor.
really you're going to have to use faith to really gravitate towards that. I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I'm just saying that for me, I don't know if I have enough faith to really believe in stuff like that.
I'm super duper in favor of what a lot of people think is dark. I really believe in doubt and criticism, examination, all this stuff. Until you strain to the point of like I have no idea, and then maybe sit there with reality or something. Like I'm super in favor of stuff like um actually strangely I kind of want to get into like neuroscience a little bit for a second, where it's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a lot
sure.
of people a lot of people interpret logic as hyper negative because part of what your frontal brain does is like think about things before you do them, so you rule a lot of stuff out, and then people are like, but I'm doing those things. And it's like, yeah, but I want a better career. I want to be paid slightly more than that. And they're like, how dare you say that this is a bad idea or like less good than this other thing? And it's like, because they're identifying with it and stuff like. So logic is often interpreted as like highly emotionally negative to people because you're ruling a bunch of stuff out and then, okay, what options do I have left? You know what I mean? Um, so it's like I'm super in favor of logic and critique and doubt and skepticism, all that stuff. And I consider it fundamental to the way your brain works. But I just noticed that a lot of people interpret it as like hyper negative or like antisocial because it's like I just don't want to do that. I want to do something better. Like I'm gonna rule all this stuff out, say no to a bunch of people, and do what I think works for me. Like you know,
I just want to own them. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
No,
everything's
no.
stupid. If
But
I just start there, I'll be better somehow. Whatever's left.
we'll see. The thing is that I think part of it is people don't want to feel like they're being duped or they're being fooled. And, because, we know, for example, people lie. There's all kinds of resurrection stories in history that aren't just Christian, Jewish. There's all kinds of different, belief systems out there that strain everybody's credulity. And a Christian may say, well, don't believe that. That's obviously bullshit. Who would believe that shit? But they believe other bullshit, other things other people would call bullshit. So it's like, where does an outsider sit? If it's not part of my experience, then my belief in it would be based on what exactly? And if I'm consistent, then I would have to, live consistent. I would try to live consistently. Like if I say, well, I don't believe in I don't believe in little fairies. I don't believe in the teapot that floats around Jupiter. because there's no reason for that. Yet I'll go ahead and believe all this other shit. Then I'm being inconsistent. And I know to myself I'm being inconsistent. And so I don't know if I can really live that way. But on the other hand, I'm also open-minded to the sense that, well, the fact that something exists at all is a miracle in itself. That's like the resurrection of Jesus would be small potatoes compared to an entire universe that just existed from nothing, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's what
that's got
man.
to be the biggest miracle. If there's anything woo-woo at all, that should be the thing we should all be looking at. Like, how the fuck are we here to even talk about this shit? That makes the
Same.
resurrection of Jesus look like small potatoes. But the I guess the thing that kind of throws me off is a couple things, is that there's all kinds of liars, there's all kinds of stories. So we have to be discerning on that. So that kind of raises doubt. And then the other thing, for me, there's this problem of evil that exists in the world, like unnecessary suffering type of evil. So it's like, how does the Christian God or Allah or any of these other Abrahamic sort of gods, how do they resolve that problem? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll go through what you said a little bit, like maybe 3 points. So for the first thing, that's actually beyond my pay grade. So I don't take the stance. I know a lot of people are kind of heavy-handed, or very rigid, but aren't really providing any kind of proof for a lot of things. So all I really have is like, look, that's not even my pay grade. Like God will take care of that, however He does, I guess, with much greater capacity than me. I can help with like any kind of materialism or like maybe some moral logic, like some science, like certain things do actually work out for me. I can try and make some like kind of far out esoteric type arguments to kind of point to certain things being wacky and one type of way instead of another potentially. But that's beyond my pay grade, so I don't really take that tack. Like I just kind of like, here's some common sense material things that I think are true. Here's sort of my argument for why morality is sort of like uh, good and bad outcomes, like from a selfish point of view. Like I don't. It's not like an egoic argument exactly, but it's that like objectively there are processes and a delineation, and if you apply like logic and stuff, you can see that certain things make you feel good, certain things are good for your health, certain things
Mm-hmm.
work, certain things don't work, like engineering. Um, and then what was your further point? It was like as far as like uh oh oh yeah, the problem of evil. So um yeah, I straight up just think that God created evil, and that it has to do with like the function of free will. So I'm not going to do much justice to the concept, I don't think, but I just think God created evil, and I'm okay with that, basically. If you look at it from like the take one step back and look at it from the perspective of like a Greek drama or something, it's the structure of the drama and it gives like meaning and purpose without necessarily like highlighting the devil or evil as like two. It's not a polar opposite. It's not like equally valid. It's not but that just kind of gets into like, I don't know, the apocalypse or whatever. You need sort of a resolution to the drama structure, I guess, ultimately at the end of the day. Um, which I can't really tell you one way or another because time doesn't seem to be
Yeah, for
over or
me,
whatever.
like, I don't know. I think of it very simply. And and I understand that all of this stuff is subjective, especially when it comes to problem of evil stuff. Some people don't have a problem with the problem of evil. It's not a problem for them. Some people see that evil is kind of cool. They kind of look at like, oh, babies fucking born with their skin inside out. Cool. That's awesome. I've heard people say that, even Christians, that say that that kind of shit is just cool. They don't have a problem with that. Yeah, if I was God, I would do it too.
Well, I
For
essentially think
morally
that
sufficient reasons. But just for me, just as a subjective person, I look at that stuff like I wouldn't do that to anyone. So I'm not sure why I would worship anyone who would be in favor of that kind of treatment. Like even the flood of Noah, like I understand that according to the story, the Nephilim were making out with women and causing a lot of problems in the world. But in the process, he drowned babies and stuff like that, like innocent kids and blah blah blah. And I know some people will say, well, those babies, all they really did is change addresses. All they really did is go to heaven from there.
No, those
But I
babies
would just
weren't
say,
innocent. Don't you know they were in on it?
yeah, or something like that. Like the babies were going to grow up and be assholes too, or something. Like God knew things that we don't know, and then that's
No,
why he.
they were assholes right then and there. You know, they were
Yeah,
participating.
yeah, whatever it is. But it's just like for me, and maybe that's just a reflection of my subjectivity as a limited person. I tend to look at these stories like, okay, either it's some great unknown shit that I just don't know about, or maybe it's just people making shit up. And I've seen people make shit up. I've seen people lie. I've seen mythology in history. So I tend to lean that way. But that's just me. You know what I'm saying? Like I just kind of think that way. That's the way my brain thinks. It's real fucked up.
Yeah, so it's like I kind of look at it like good, if you want to call it that, tends to argue that there is good and evil and that matters, but evil tries to say like it's nothing and nothing matters, therefore evil isn't like a problem. But I kind of look at it as like just logic. I'm kind of coming from the tack that you are, where it's like I just think logic is very functional and good. I think it's like really useful because I've been working with my hands for years, and it's like a lot of people I can't explain to them. Like, do you have any idea how many times I've like pretty significantly hurt myself by just doing something slightly wrong for like a half second and just screw myself up? Like
Mm,
in the real world, like that does actually exist, and it's like I don't like a big chunk missing out of my leg because I was being stupid with like a 2x4 and a power tool. You know what I mean? Um,
mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. So I kind of just approach it with that sort of tact. Like logic is kind of useful. Like it is kind of helpful a little bit. I guess as I said in a previous stream, like some people just don't want to be happy. Like some people just don't want to feel good. Like some people don't care about resolving the problem of their suffering or something. Supposedly, they cry a lot though, for supposedly not caring. But I'm just trying to be common sense. So I try not to reach too much, kind of like your position. Like, I just try not to reach too much about issues. But I'm like, yeah, I don't like, uh, I try and drive like in the lines on the road because I have this sense that if I didn't, I'd end up like in a ditch and possibly through the windshield. I'm pretty sure that's true.
Mm-hmm.
I think
So
that would
Vaughn
suck.
says, where is it written that babies drown? The Bible doesn't support that. Yeah, I guess it wasn't explicitly put in the Bible, but if we're consistent, like we'd have to use that same rule for everything. Like if it wasn't written in the Bible, it didn't happen. It's kind of like the Satan in the garden. It doesn't say that Satan was the serpent, but we all know that's who it was, right? But it doesn't explicitly say that. So are we just going to go by exactly what's said and what's not said? I guess I'm just looking for consistency. Um, and you can apply that same logic to everything. Like if logic means anything, then we're going to have to infer. I mean, that's what logic is inference. Um, so I guess when we read the Bible, it just depends on how you approach it. Do we approach the Bible only by what it says, or do we also have to do some interpretation? And it
See
seems like
now
most
you're
people
touching
interpret.
on
Hmm?
see now you're touching on Protestants versus Catholics, and initially you might think that the Protestants are arguing like strictly interpret the Bible, but it's also like okay, so you just said like, can I like think for myself at all? Can I try and figure out what's going on around me? Like, is necessarily every detail like in the Bible, at least on the surface? Like maybe as a elaboration of some principle, sure, but like, is it directly stated in some obvious way? And it's like, no, I think God is the authority, to which the Bible is some extremely significant, but like kind of lesser. Uh, I don't know what you want to call it, aspect of things. Like, um, it's a really, I think, esoteric point, but it's like, could God do something that's not in the Bible? Could God like just throw the Bible up in the air and do something else? Like I think that would be within the power of God, but it does seem like one of these could God create a boulder he couldn't lift type questions where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
would he contradict himself? Like, I don't think there's any need for that, but I just don't think the Bible is like God exactly. Like I see the logos, the word kind of connection, I get that. Um, but I think you can experience things in your life that are not necessarily super explicitly stated in the Bible. But that's the Protestant Catholic issue, sort of, because it's not about something on the Bible, like, and being against like some other human who, why are you better at interpreting this? It's, I literally am, again, like kind of an enlightenment thinker. Like I would actually like to try and figure things out with like science and stuff.
Hey, how you doing, Vaughn?
Hey, blessings, my brothers. How y'all
Blessings, man. How you doing, brother?
doing? I'm doing good. Yeah, I just wanted to say you're right when you look for consistent, but different issues in the Bible is interpreted different ways. It depends on what are you reading. The outcome could be different. Even if you read something that is the same, that doesn't mean the outcome will be the same. It can be different. But let's
What do you
just go
mean? Go ahead and give me an example.
as far as that what? As far as what?
How the outcome could not be the same or something like that. You were saying, trying to follow.
We could go by. Oh, we could go by the. Let me see, because let me go try to listen to what you just said as far as the serpent. The serpent can say one thing, and someone else can say the same thing as the serpent, and the outcome could be different. Like you would say, some people say the serpent lied. Some people say the serpent deceived.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham deceived just like the serpent, but the
Mm-hmm.
outcome is different. But the outcome is different.
Right.
Abraham's heart was different than where the Satan's heart was. Both of them deceived, two different outcomes. Then when you said as far to consistent, if we're gonna go by consistent, then it wasn't no babies. Because back, if you look in the scriptures back then, they took a potion that they could not have kids. The women did, that they could not have kids. In the Apocrypha, it says God warned them for 127 years. And he said, and he made sure the ones that walked the righteous path, they didn't go and experience anything in the flood, even before the flood. They was
But the
clearly.
Apocrypha wasn't in the original Hebrew Bible, as the Jews didn't really consider that inspired. Um, I think these books were in the Septuagint, but that was like a Greek Old Testament, which early Christians used, but
Well,
they were considered heretical later. I think, like the Catholics, of course, later
mhm,
canonized them out
mhm.
at the
Well,
Council of Trent. But
well,
yeah, the Apocrypha.
it depends on which Jewish tradition or which Jewish people that denied it. Because we know it was always in Geese in Ethiopia with those Jews.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it depends on what Jewish tradition or what Jews that decided on that, and some of them decided differently. So yes, some of them
Right.
didn't accept it, and some of them did. So
Same with
I don't.
Enoch.
Right. So I don't go by this is me.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah,
God,
yeah. I
what God,
respect that.
what
Look, you don't have to
God.
argue with me about that. I'm not gonna support any books that were removed due to theological concerns or
Right.
questions about their authority because of the Catholic Church or some other label
Right.
reformation or whatever like that. Like, I'm not about that. I'm just bringing that up. Like,
Right. Yeah. Because I was just like the brother was talking about the Protestant. That was
mhm,
a what would they call it? Not that was a theological difference, and also it was a government movement, and they took the Apocrypha out. But it was in it in many other biblical in any other biblical books and stuff like that. So like he was talking about the Protestants. So that's a different movement right there in itself. But yeah, I don't let those things lead me to make a determination to what it is and what's not.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
just
I have a
yeah.
vague argument about the babies. So it's like it depends if you think death is the most serious issue. I mean,
Mhm.
and also like every adult could just be a baby in a sense, like God's children kind of thing. So I don't know. I just don't overemphasize like that people perish.
Mhm.
It happens, and that isn't some particular issue to do with your soul or something like sorting that out. Um, so like people do die. And I mean it's like a categorical distinction between like
Mhm.
babies and adults, which I'm not sure that's really there. It kind of depends how you define things, and
But
No,
I'm
that's
not
true.
sure
here's
if you
the thing I
exactly
wanted
think
to
that's
get
a
to
real
too,
problem.
Vaughn.
That's
You
true.
mentioned that in the Apocrypha, you said, so to get back to that, you said they took a potion so that the women couldn't be pregnant during that flood.
And
Is that something?
that's said in the Bible. They took they took a potion or it's not. I don't think it said potion in the Bible, but they took something. The women took something so they could not have kids because the men did not want them to lose their figure. And in the Apocrypha, it goes deeper because they were spending more time with them than they were spending with their own wives or the ones who didn't
So
take.
does the Apocrypha, just to be consistent, does the Apocrypha literally say that women did not have bear children in those days?
Yes, it says they did not bear children. It also goes in and it says that they was breaking the law. The men and the women was breaking the law when they did that.
What scripture is that? Because I want
That's
to
in the
have that handy.
that should be in the book of Jubilee. Yeah, Jubilee or Jasher. I believe it's Jubilee
Jubilee.
or Jasher. And it says
And
God warned them for 127 years before the flood.
okay. So
It's
it's
certainly
saying that
interesting
women.
if those are actual old writings because we're seeing things like that today. Just weird point. Like if that wasn't like written relatively recently, if that was actually old, it is interesting those patterns at least, whether that's like canon or not. Like the people are talking about stuff like that. 'Cause we certainly see people doing stuff like that today.
Well, they do. They do take things so they could not. So women do take things not to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Absolutely. And also in the Bible, when you were saying potion, it reminded me of the test of a faithful wife.
Mhm.
When if a husband suspected that while he was gone, the wife was unfaithful, then she would and
Oh
she
yeah,
was pregnant, then she would take a potion, and the
and rub
priest
it up.
would get it
Yeah,
from the dirt from the temple floor,
right.
stir it up, have her drink it, and if she had a miscarriage, then she was guilty of unfaithfulness. If not, then it was all good.
Yeah,
So
it was
abortion was
another that
kind
they
of
do.
so yeah, abortion was okay in certain circumstances, it seems like back
Well,
then.
it probably it depends on according to their tradition, yeah. But it was another one that they rub on a woman's thighs, and if the thighs swell a certain,
Hmm.
it means too. But yeah, I read that also. I think that's
Yeah.
like in after yeah, that's in later. That's later after they left, when they got into the land and stuff like that. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anymore we're just arguing about like political medical coverage, like how much money does all this cost?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
Oh my
Absolutely.
god.
Yeah. Which is yeah, you're absolutely right, Neo, on that. We'll just be going back and forth with political and what people believed inside, what they went subjective, argument. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
So what is your view
I'm not
on, and I'll
completely
ask both of you
subjective.
guys as Christians, what is your view on morality? Is it subjective or objective? And how do you know?
Objective,
Objective.
but
So
subjective
define
from the
objective. How do you
so it's like subjective from the person of God, but because I'm not the source of objectivity, essentially, like So it's God's subjectivity, and I have a lesser subjectivity, but the rules are not decided by me. I mean, a ball rolls down a hill, dude. I can't change that. Like that's pretty much that's how I see it.
And what do you say, Vaughn?
I agree with what Neo said. I think that's subjective within I think it's both subjective and objective within the person. But I think like what he said, it basically starts with God. Everything starts with him. And it's just what determines on the spirit that you're being led by, or what do you feel. But it also goes by where your heart is set on too, which it gets down to the spirit that you're led by.
Yeah.
That's the part I agree with the most. Your heart, because it's like we do get into these like human subjective arguments, and not a lot of people are willing to be like, look, I don't know, I'm not exactly clear, or like I don't even know, like even further, maybe like I don't even know really how it works or what we're dealing with. Like, I'm not even gonna like say one way or the other. I'm not even sure what we're talking about. Like
You know, it's interesting. Most philosophers, if you read the the field papers or whatever, they'll say most of your philosophers are agnostic, not religious, but they all believe in objective morality. So they ground it. Maybe they don't necessarily ground it in God, but they may ground it in nature. Like they'll appeal to, like you were saying, stones roll down hills, just like people feel bad about murder and people feel cringy about rape and whatever. Right.
Right, but I can get paid to roll this stone up this hill over and over and over again, which is just modern innovation. I can get paid for that this time.
And so subjectively you would see a value in yeah, because that's where they both can sort of get into this sort of non-dual interpretation of morality, where it's sort of like both and they kind of collapse, you know. That's kind of the way I look at it, though.
You say consensus of the philosophy of the people,
like as far as number, not consensus like 100%, but consensus meaning like most philosophers would call themselves agnostic, but then most philosophers also believe morality is objective, so they ground morality in
I mean, I'd agree with both sides. That's what God has me. See, I don't get into as far as I see what you're saying as far as with the senses on that, but the ones that doesn't agree with those senses, I agree with them also. So that's why it depends on the individual, like what you go by when it comes to reasoning. So that's my main thing right there. It's on both sides.
Frameworks. Yeah, like people can pick their framework, and we're all subjects. At the end of the day, we're all subjects. So everything we say is going to be a reflection of that. So we're going to be like looking at morality, the God question, the Bible, evil, good, all of that shit is going to bottom out to the fact that we're just subjective creatures with limited minds.
Correct.
And that's what kind of keeps me humble about these conversations. Like I can get on here and I usually rag on people that are so confident in their views. I just like to expose the fact that a lot of people don't really realize that there are rigorous arguments to the contrary as well. You know, a lot of people take that for granted. Like a lot of atheists may say, oh, theism is obvious bullshit, you know, and they don't really understand that there's a lot of really rigorous study that went into theism and philosophical views. Got a really big history of reasons for being a theist or reasons for being a Christian or a Muslim or whatever. Like there's a lot of good argument points. It's not just as simple as, oh, that's bullshit and whatever I believe is obviously right. It's like not that simple. It doesn't work that way.
It's a lot harder to score any points after several thousand years, you know.
Yeah, like you know, that's I don't really argue with people about God really too much, because in a way I'm a theist in a way, In some ways, you could say that, but in other ways, maybe I'm not, because it just depends on how people are defining God and stuff like that. And because I mean, for some Christians, they told me that if you're a Protestant, you're an atheist because you're not believing in the true God, which is no God, because there's only one God, and that's the Catholic God, or whatever.
Yeah, that's what gets me. I don't. So that's what this is what God has me, the path that He has me on. I don't subject myself into a tunnel of this is it, and anything outside of that is not. Because especially if I say God is all, then I'm contradicting myself.
Yeah, exactly.
And then say He's not this, He's not that. Then I'm truly like being basically contradicting, being hypocritical, whatever they describe it. And I don't subject myself to that. But I always look at all. And I look for, like what the Bible says, who's led by the Spirit searches for all things. And that's what I do. I don't care who I'm talking to, whoever I'm talking to. I'm searching for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding whoever I'm talking to. And that's why I don't. And I tell people all the time, they say, well, because they do it in a Christian. What a Jehovah's Witness, they not Christians. Well, they say the same thing about you.
Yeah, right.
They say the same thing about
exactly. It's that consistency problem always comes back and bites you, you know.
Right. And then the Muslims, they do it in Islam. You got Muslims against the Shia and all this. And I'm like, well, they say the same thing about you. So I mean, this is an argument all you see on a consistent basis. So that's why I don't get I don't get myself caught up in that.
Yeah,
My
it's easy to see it. Yeah.
Is to search for the wisdom in it, to edify, to be edified, no matter what it is. Even if I'm talking to someone, they say he's the devil.
Angle. There's one other angle, and it's the Cold War. We haven't figured out, any of us apparently, how to take out literally everyone else. So that line of argumentation didn't work either. The personal attacks, like kind of stuck.
Yeah, we share space. We share space with each other.
That's true.
And
They're working on it, some of them.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. And and plus, there's also a functional thing, like if a belief system helps you in life to find peace of mind, it helps you to have a good experience in this life, then it's probably going to help you to be kind to other people, because usually people that are assholes are very unhappy kind of people, right?
That's true.
Like I've seen a lot of unhappy people, and they seem to be they have an axe to grind with everybody about everything.
Right.
And so a lot of people, though, they find a lot of peace and joy in their life through all kinds of shit. Some people it's politics, some people it's religion, some people it's science, or whatever, mathematics. I've seen people find a lot of happiness through their philosophical stuff. But if being a Christian or being a religious person brings you security, peace of mind, happiness in your life, I always encourage it, because I'd rather live with people that are happy. And I wouldn't want to argue with them about that. Like the old lady down at the church, she don't give a fuck about my problems of evil arguments and shit.
Right.
All she cares about is she goes to church. She understands that Jesus is her Lord.
Right.
And that's all that matters there. And there ain't a goddamn thing you're going to say about it that's going to change her mind. And I wouldn't want to be that person, Go ahead.
They got food that they give out too, like every Saturday or whatever it is too.
Yeah.
The old lady at the church. Oh, they're really pleasant.
Oh yeah.
And
definitely,
the hell out of you too. They're sketchy.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like I don't have a problem. But what I do enjoy, I like to challenge, like, just because it makes you I think it would make you a better Christian if you're open to challenges to your religion. That's just my opinion. The same with anything. The same with your atheism or agnosticism or whatever, because then you have a more solid understanding, because we don't think of everything. We're imperfect. So if someone can roll an idea by, just like Neo De-establishment did just now, he shot some stuff about my philosophical model that sort of gave me something to think about. So now I have to go back and check that out. and that's good. That helps me refine my life, and now I'm evolving as a person, because now my consciousness is expanding into different ideas and ways to think about shit, you know. And so there's nothing wrong with that, I think. But a lot of people, they don't like challenges to their beliefs, and I think this is because they have an attachment issue, where they get attached and identified with their beliefs and their ego and things like that, and they're
Yeah, I
not
do.
willing, you know.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, I feel what you're saying. You're absolutely right. And I think when people, because I, talk to people, and when they say, as far as challenge, it's in the Bible. Abraham was, but that was the strongest point, because he was observant, because he was, especially when it came to following the statues. He was like, why am I sitting here praising the statue that was made by someone's hand? Why
Right.
why am I praising something that a hand that I pretty much made it, they made it, and they're gonna turn around and worship it? Doesn't make sense. And that's what that was his strongest point. He was observant and he challenged everything. And that's what, like what you're saying, that's what I do too. I don't care who am I talking to. I don't challenge it in a way, try to disrespect you or say that you're wrong or thing like that. I challenge to gain wisdom, not only, for myself, to understand you completely and understand what path you on, because it will help me deal with my life too.
Yeah, what is it? 1 Peter 3:15. Paul said that, be prepared to give a reason with gentleness and grace, or give generously from the heart, your answer to those who question your faith. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing to have reasonable dialogue, and to challenge each other from time to time. Like, what does he talk about? The Bereans, who used to go back and study everything. They would just double check everything in the scriptures. And Paul really, admonished them for that.
Yo, I got you on a challenge to your conceptions. So I'm gonna put forth a theory about pop culture. Okay, we're gonna take a tangent. Willy Wonka was actually about avoiding taxes, and he was a civil rights hero. Is what that whole movie was actually about.
Hmm.
So it's like at the end, you see he's like, Charlie has failed the test. All the kids got like, they lost, right? He's sitting there at his desk looking over this paperwork, and it's like, why would Willy Wonka have paperwork? This is Willy Wonka's factory. Like, why would he? He doesn't do paperwork, right? But he is the most autistically educated person of all time about legal language, and he's like screaming at them about like just Latin, and he's like, see, because of this and this here. And so Charlie comes back and puts the gobstopper on his desk, and he's like, oh, thank God. He literally like puts his hand on the gobstopper, and he's like, there's a light in the weary world. He's like having a moment with God, because Willy Wonka invented Slugworth Industries. It's a psyop on the whole community. And like Charlie's grandfather has been living in this community for years. He used to like work for Wonka, but then he shut down the factory because the government's coming at him for like monopolism. But it's just that everybody's very negative and nobody wants to make candy. And he's like unironically a good dude. That's why he makes sure that all the kids have chaperones when they come to the factory, because he's like, they're not catching me on this nonsense. They're not going to like hit me with this Michael Jackson stuff. So he literally like has extremely elaborate paperwork. He's got to like hand off the factory to charity. Because he's got to like he literally at a certain point was like, I need to get out of here. Like he shut down the factory, and then took like a trip to Oompa Land, wherever that is, saved these people from like wild animals and stuff. And so he's like actually a hero, but then they're coming at him for like slavery charges and monopolism and just inventing Slugworth Industries, like a major industry, because he's created like a pseudo trust because they're coming at him for like monopolism, and he's like, oh my God, I'm just trying to make candy, and he like saved these people. Like, why don't you pay them? Well, because they can't go in society because everybody's racist. So I got to have Slugworth sneak out the back every single day and buy cigarettes because like Wonka just chain smokes actually. And
Oompa Loompa labor.
I swear to God, no, but they're cool with it. Like he saved them from like a certain doom, and they're like happy, and they refuse to take anything but chocolate. And it's like they can't go in society. This is an absolutely miserable town. The first half of the movie is so depressing I can barely stand it. And like they're just racist. They're just racist. And he's like, this is like almost like some kind of Harriet Tubman. Like he's like hiding them under the floorboards, you know? And like, I don't even know. But then he's like, oh crap, I got to get out of these like taxes. They're coming at me for like monopolism and slavery and all this stuff. And I'm just trying to make candy and be like a light in the world. And so he's got to like come up with this whole thing where it's like it's the most popular public event of all time. And he hands it over to some kid. So now the government, because like they still got him on the inventing Slugworth Industries out of nothing. That's still highly illegal. Because even though he's got all his debts and everything squared away, even though he got all the paperwork and technicalities, like handed the stuff off to this kid, and like he's like, fine, like the monopolism is handled, the slavery thing. I can get the hell out of here. But they're just gonna screw me on making Slugworth Industries out of literally nothing. So he's got to like create a public spectacle and give it to this kid, and so politically that the government just couldn't possibly go at him for this.
He was fighting the candy cartels, man. That's what it was. But yeah, man.
The most American movie of all time. It's about paperwork. Like he's just trying to dodge paperwork. It ain't right. Like, and he was just trying to make candy, and like he was a positive individual.
Yeah. Well, you know,
it's all movie about tax avoidance.
Well, that's why I really don't trust politics. I don't trust the government. I don't trust authority figures. I mean, everybody's obviously in it for their own power and interest. That's why they have special interest groups and stuff like that. So to me, it's hard to really follow that shit and really argue the point, because again, it goes back to consistency, and always somewhere down the line on either side, someone's going to always be inconsistent about something. And, you know, so those kind of conversations, I have a lot more fun talking about religion and spirituality and philosophy and things like that.
He knows that paperwork isn't going to be straight, but it's got to be straight enough. And then he's got to get the hell out of there. He's got to retire and go find a girlfriend, you know?
Yeah,
that's why, like, the whole public PR angle, he's like, what are you going to do now? You can't, like, oh, you're going to charge this kid with, like, a monopoly and you ruin everybody's buzz. Like, he's smart. He knows that he can't get this paperwork straight because there's 700,000 documents that if you ever want to do anything exactly right. Scott Adams made a point one time about how, you know, like, small businesses somewhat fudging the numbers. Like, just look, if you had to write down literally every single time you sneezed, you know, because there is a document for that. And he's like, yeah, but everything would just implode immediately. It would just implode.
Oh yeah, no, for real. Where does it end?
But you don't write everything down. That's crazy.
Well, hey man, I got to jump off here and get ready to meet somebody. We've been on for almost 3 hours, so enjoyed another show. Thanks a lot for coming on and presenting your views, and everybody for that matter. So we're gonna link up next weekend.
Yeah, so but just think about Willy Wonka, please.
Yeah,
please consider that Willy Wonka is actually like an American civil rights hero movie.
Oh yeah, I already know about the story. Yeah, absolutely. He was yeah, it's funny. All right, guys, we'll talk to y'all later, man. Y'all be good.